Everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science DC Comics podcast. Jim here, and we have a pretty big show, I think. I haven't edited anything yet, but it seemed like I was talking to a lot of people for a lot of time for this episode. Now, I will mention this a bunch of times, and I ended up talking to Tom at the end of the podcast and said to him that when you have different people that come on, you tend to talk about some things, repeat some things, because if you can tell, I am struggling to talk still. I thought it was getting better at one point, but now I hear it weird. But I did end up getting in a bit of an accident. I got hit by a truck while riding a bike, ended up going into the handlebars and split my lip completely down the middle. It is healing. This was about Wednesday night. And since then, I've done, obviously, the recordings for this show, but a couple other things and whatnot. But I'm still struggling talking because my lip and my mouth is so swollen that at points, certain, especially S's and C's, I'm having problems with going. And in the meantime, my teeth on the bottom row kind of went through my lip, and I lost a tooth as well. So I have some problems here. But I will keep mentioning it because there's different people I'm talking to, I'm saying this because I realize that it might sound like I'm begging for sympathy, which I am. But that's, it's a cry for help. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm struggling. And because of that, the podcast won't be really affected, except that I'm going to skip the news for this week, because now that I'm getting to the end of the recordings and I have to edit and whatnot, I am in a bit of pain. I ended up doing me and Gray's Absolute DC podcast we do every Friday. There's Absolute Books. We go on live on YouTube at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we were doing that, I had actually taken some painkillers because it hurt so much. And I got loopy, so I'm not going to take those anymore. I don't think that was a good idea. Now, of course, if we had Eric here and I was talking about this, oh my. And I do want to mention, shout out to everybody. A bunch of people have gotten a hold of me and said that they really are enjoying. Now, they say they miss Eric, but are really enjoying the new format, enjoying me talking to a bunch of different people. This week, not a ton of books, a plethora minus one. We have 5 books plus a retro book that I do with Stork, but I'll be talking to Gabe, drunk Simon, drunk off his ass, and also Tom. So there's only 5 regular books, and then, of course, the retro review with my man, Stork. And as I said, I'm going to skip the news this week, kind of get past that. We'll get back to it next week. And there weren't any mails that I saw. And if you do want to email the show, and if you do, we read everything, even if you're mad, whatever, please email us at weirdsciencedccomics@gmail.com. And as I said, most people are reaching out and saying, hey, listen, I really miss Eric, but it's really cool having different people go and having different opinions and things like that. And one of the things that I was asked was, where's Rocky? Rocky from Comic Boom. He joined me when Eric went on the hiatus a couple years ago. And in fact, I got a hold of Rocky because me and Rocky ended up doing our Patreon Spotlight this week. And we did end up talking DC versus Vampires World War V #7 and Black Lightning #5, the finale of that series. And one of the things I said in that, I couldn't find anybody else who was reading these books. This is one of the things that is the constant fear in my head, especially when me and Eric would talk and I'd say to him, I think that we're taking a lot of time on these books that nobody's reading. Now, in the meantime, a lot of people do end up saying, hey, I'm not reading those books, but I like to keep up to date with it but through you guys and stuff. So we'll keep doing the books. And Rocky actually got me a little more positive about those two books that I haven't really been enjoying, but those were picked by the badasses of the Get Fresh crew. And if you want to listen to that show, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/ Weird Science, which I will mention. I usually don't mention people leaving the Patreon, but somebody did finally. Took a little bit, but they finally left. And in the exit survey said they were leaving because they only liked Eric and hated my guts. So there you go. Didn't really say they hated my guts, but said, I'm more of an Eric guy and I'm out. So I'm like, all right. So we did lose one person, but maybe, just maybe some Jim guys. We'll see the Jim guys, right? They'll join in the Patreon. But if you did, and if you want to, it's a cool thing, I hope. We have a lot of shows, a lot of reading clubs. And if you go now to Weird Science, patreon.com/Weird Science, see a smooth oiled machine at episode 580. If you do go there, and again, patreon.com/Weird Science, you can go and get a 7-day free trial and listen to a ton of shows. But as I said, the badasses ended up picking DC vs. Vampires World War V number 7 and Black Lightning number 5, so we won't hear those tonight. But with that, I want to give them a shout out. I want to do the roll call. Here we go with the badass roll call. We have Sean M., Edward Hawa, Andrew, don't mention it, D-Man 3001, David Fink, Jack Halsey, Jack's awesome, Brandon, Nick Russ, everybody's awesome, but Trevitt, Tom Johnson, Dan Smith, JLG, the Big Z, the Mark Claire Show, the Annihilator, Ted Probst, I Love Punchline, Stork, Michael S., Dr. Matt Razor. He's a doctor. He's got his PhD in something. Niels T-Wort. I was going to make a joke, and I couldn't come up with one. Stephen Baum. Jason Colby Sue 42 to you and me. Mike G. Ken Halleck that I heard from this week. A big shout-out to Ken. Comic Boom Arake. Mark Jager. Ruben. Carlos. Two Wolf Marv. Luke Hollywood. Simon. Drunk Simon. Drunk Simon comes in hard and heavy. People gave him a little flack for not being drunk enough on our spot that we did. Luis, Manship, Swanee, Josh Vermillion, Batman Beyond Mark, Brandy Emery Beamuir up in Canada, Buffalo, Canada, and doxing his ass in Minnesota, Double A-Ron. Shout out to all-time greats, Reginald Drinkwater and Rob Lewis. And, pour one out for my man, Eric Lee Shea. But that is it for that. And as we get into this show, it's a good week. I'll tell you, I think that some people are going to say stuff like, man, Eric's gone and Jim's become Mr. Positive, because I really, really liked a bunch of the books this week. And while I didn't love all of them, some of the ones that I didn't quite like, I still liked enough. Rocky got me to even enjoy some things that I didn't really think that I was into. But boy, two of the books, and I'll just tell you right now, the two books that I really, really like, Green Lantern Corps and Aquaman, are really good this week and have me very, very excited, playing things smart, playing things pretty big. So we're going to get into that. We're going to start with me and Sus Gabe. Sus Gabe ends up saying something about Tom King that made me laugh. I was still laughing about it 2 days after he said it. Not just what he said. It's mainly because Gabe is just dry as the desert, right? Gabe, when he told me, telling you, the funniest thing Gabe ever said to me was, I said, hey, I have a segment that I want to do with you that might be pretty funny. People will think it's funny. And he goes, yeah, a lot of people think I'm hilarious, but really I'm not that funny. I'm like, nobody thinks you're hilarious, Gabe. Not one person ever said that to me about you. But he says something that made me laugh so much. It made me laugh so much. See if you think it's fun. And as I said, we'll also end up talking Drunk Simon. We have Stork, and then we have at the end, my man Tom. So we have a bunch of things going on. I will dip out when we go, and then I'll be back at the end to wrap things up and tell you what we'll be doing next week. But thanks for staying with the intro. Still a little off. It's weird to record by yourself when you're used to saying stuff and kind of bouncing things off of people. But with all that, we will go off now and possibly, maybe as a nostalgia type thing after a couple of weeks, maybe we'll even listen to an Eric song as we go. Maybe the last time it'll happen. But here we go into the books.
There's a man who has plenty of susteaks. It's amazing all the enemies that he makes. He says he's honest, so I guess it's fine, except when he gave that predator one a 9. He says that he's not funny, and it's true. He reads all the shitty books for me and you. He's Sasuke, and here he comes, making sexy jokes is something that he shuns. He's Sasuke, he draws a line, except when he gave Predator 1 a 9.
And here we are, and I'm here with Sus Gabe as the leadoff hitter again. Gabe, you are the leadoff batter for the podcast through and through, mainly because you end up pretty much reviewing the bigger books, right? The big stellar books like the ones we're going to talk about. What up, Gabe?
Well, thank you. I am here with Mushmouth Jim, and we're ready to start this cavalcade of reviews, views, and
skews and
everything.
Cavalcade of stars.
I don't even know what to call it.
Action comics. Luckily, that thing's ending soon. I told people at one point that you kind of put yourself into a corner when you call it like the superstars or whatnot, because some people are going to giggle when you say certain names and whatnot. Though, again, John Ridley, he's a name. I don't think he's a superstar comic writer. He did a little bit better, screenwriting and things like that, but he's not anybody I think that people search out, really, right?
Yeah, he is an Oscar winner for one particular film. I haven't seen that translate into the comics as far as, wow, he writes comics as well as he writes movies, because so far his tenure at DC has not been great. So, that's where we are.
There's some things with him that when you hear certain names and you end up like Mark Russell, you're like, okay, it's going to be commentary. It's going to be this humorous take of social situations that he thinks is funny, and maybe some other people do. I don't think me and you do quite often, but with John Ridley, you do end up getting a bit of, social commentary and things like that. So
to be expected.
And when you started this, the first two issues, okay, you have this idea of somebody stealing hope, and it's a weird play and never really is explained much, but it seemed like, maybe this is something a little different. Maybe this is something that it might be clever by the end. Spoiler, it wasn't. And it becomes social commentary, as we thought. So at the end, it makes it about face, though, to get there, to throw something in the third issue, in this third act, last act of, oh, by the way, it was always about this that you never saw. And it's really bad storytelling in my mind. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a 3-issue story, and if you really think about it, Superman may be at the center of the story, but it's really almost not a Superman story. He's just sort of he's just learning things as the story unfolds on its own. You could almost say that you could almost say it's a detective story, like something you'd find with Batman. Not quite that, but at the same time, it's not about Superman facing a challenge and then overcoming it. It's Superman just sort of observing that these things are happening around him, and then he's just sort of reacting to it a little bit. So in a way, it's almost not even a Superman story.
And when we get into it, I'll give you the credits. And when we get into it, I'll explain to you that I wanted it to be more of actually a detective story and maybe go that route with Superman included as well, but could have been more of a Clark Kent story as well. But it is Action Comics. It's Action Comics 1084, written by John Ridley, art by Anika Miranda. Colors Ava De La Cruz, letters Dave Sharp. Cover, I'll just go through the whole thing. Gleb Melnikov as the cover. All that stuff, art-wise, pretty good. And you end up having Brittany Holzer and group editor Paul Kaminsky, assistant editor. Also,
well, that should have been a red flag right there.
Jillian Grant, I know. And Yaya's loving everything you say there. He's right on board with that. So when you get to the end, I start to think, because you do have Clark Kent, reporter, and Lois is at the end. They're having this discussion. But in the meantime, the only thing that kind of pulls you in as Superman is this hope idea of steel. But why not stay on Earth? Why not go? Because what ends up happening is Major Force's daughter is the thing that really is the big story here, that she accidentally killed that Boink, and that's what ended up starting this whole thing down the line. Now, in the background, I think that this hope stuff is just there to force Superman to do something. It doesn't feel like he's that involved, like you say, and then the ending is a non-ending. So why not have it where, oh my God, look, Major Force, he's done this. Superman thinks there's something wrong. Something doesn't match up. So he actually goes into a bit of detective mode and tries to figure out, and by the end figures out that it was his daughter. But instead, like you said, it's not that Superman's figuring things out. He is actually told everything. He's taken places. He's not doing it himself. And it feels way, way off. And then by the end, I'm thinking, we wasted an issue and a half with this idea of Bruno Mannheim and the hope, even if it was going to be the idea of a story where somehow genetically you can take somebody's hope, you can take their hope. Boy, that sets up a Metropolis in a story where what is Superman? How does he react when he's all about hope? And you never really get to there either. You don't really do anything of anything here to then at the end have weird commentary about how this is going on, right?
But Jim, you're spoiling the big twist, which is that it's all about Penny, which is a character that isn't even mentioned in the first two issues. In other words, John really has now constructed this mystery, and the mystery is, why are all these guys losing hope? And then you go through this scenario where Clark Kent does a little investigative journalism.
He finds
a few leads. He doesn't do a terrible job, but he finds a few things out. But essentially, he's being told everything that's along the way. And then when you get to the very end, you find out that, these villains are losing hope because they're donating parts of their DNA to this gang of aliens or demons. We don't even know what they are.
Who knows?
Because it makes them immortal. And then you find out, well, okay, but the reason he committed the crime from the beginning of the series wasn't because he lost hope and he backslid. It was actually he was covering up to protect his daughter, which had nothing to do with what this gang of Foreverers was doing. So in other words, he constructed this mystery he didn't even know that was happening in the first place.
Yeah, we didn't know there was a mystery. That's my biggest problem. The mystery we thought was, what about this hope? And even then, what are you playing with? Because when you do have these three, when you do have the Foreverers, it just sounds like you just keep the Forever.
Not a great name.
Not at all. It's like the rural juror. So you end up, while that's going on, you want to get something from this. So when you do have these reveals of, we took the hope because that will make us immortal, then I'm thinking, well, are you saying that that's why Superman actually, not that it's Kryptonian, but it's the hope that's engraved? But no, it never is explained. The idea of getting somebody's hope that makes you live forever doesn't. And then voila, we also have their powers. Like, that is out of the blue, out of nowhere. And we see Major Force and all these, like, what are their powers and what did they get? And it's not like they lost their powers to play that into a mystery either. It's just all of a sudden we have their powers, and then Superman goes, they're not anything anyway. So like you said, the big twist is Penny. Penny, who shows up legitimately on basically like page 15 or 16 of the final issue.
It's almost like the very end of the comic.
Yep. You are at you're at the final act. I mean, it is the final act where all of a sudden you're like, get this. It was a mystery that it's one thing to not be able to play with a mystery, but when you don't even know there's one, there's ridiculous. A problem. And so again, that's why I thought it might be the play where Superman, this hope thing, odd. It never really played out. It was just, again, Superman equals hope. Let's say they sell their hope, but it really doesn't do anything. But
I think the way they're playing it though is that they're donating what they call the telomeres, right? It's a portion of their DNA that's supposed to give you immortality if you ingest it. It's kind of almost like a weird form of vampirism, right? They're consuming this, but it never really explains why taking that off makes you hopeless. It doesn't explain why taking those off would transfer their powers to somebody else.
No.
And all of that setup has nothing to do with Penny. And
it doesn't. And so when you do this, and I'm saying, because they are saying it in here, we get their hope. It is almost like maybe that's not exactly the case, but that is they're saying that because of the after effect. But even so, it's the idea. So if that's the case, if the case is just let's go surface level, they're stealing hope, well, wouldn't you want to get who has more hope than Superman? Like, that would have been something too for Bruno Mannheim to try to get Superman, because boy, you could sell a lot of hope if you can get it from Superman. In the meantime, the play of it is the telomeres being gone, and the three end up saying, well, why do you care about these, criminals? They're trash. They legitimately says that. And the idea they don't have any hope, it just gets convoluted. It all gets convoluted. And then when Penny shows up, you're like, what the hell happened? Like, it just is out of nowhere.
And what makes it even, I won't say, well, it's already worse. It's not a very good comic. But what makes it worse is at no point are they really like stealing it away from them. It's just a side effect that they didn't realize when they signed up for it. this entire setup, I mean, as ugly and as like distasteful as it is, was all up above board.
Well, the guy said, he's like,
Manheim approached him and said, if you donate this stuff to us, we'll give you a bunch of money. It's basically a cash for body fluids kind of an exchange. So at no point is it ever really clear that what they're doing is illegal. It's not FDA approved, but at the same time, nobody's being like knocked out and like they wake up with their kidney gone or something like that. These supervillains volunteered to do this because they were having trouble staying on the straight and narrow and they needed some cash. So you never really get the sense that they're breaking any law.
No, it's like the gray area that's interesting. That you could have Superman say, this has to stop. And they're like, why? We're not doing anything wrong. It would be like us signing an agreement, Apple agreement like that on South Park and things like that, hey, we signed off on these things, but, they're doing bad things. So there's that gray area that you could play with. And again, Superman could end up saying, my hands are tied at the end. I want to stop this. And maybe the idea would then be to go to these villains and try to talk to them and say, listen, I want to help you. I haven't been helping them, whatever it would be. But instead, like you said, it's not even the idea that it's straight up, oh my God, this is evil, bad, whatever. They're selling it to them. Then that's what leads to Major Force say, or at least Penny, his daughter, say like, all of a sudden he was giving me money, but that's the only way you can make money. It's all convoluted by the end to make it like, what is this story about? And then at one point, Scorch sends a Bruno Mannheim, who really, again, is doing one of the more up-and-up things he's ever done. Sends him to hell.
There's no clear indication that what he's doing is illegal. It's shady. It's shady as hell, but you never get it completely illegal. And it would be different here. I hate to rewrite, but this is just kind of that's the way I do things, right? It would be different if Superman came along and said, and all of a sudden the supervillains were depressed and then they died. He's like, okay, something's killing them. And then Mannheim says, well, that's too bad. I mean, it's like, and he's saying, no, you got to stop because it's killing them. And he's trying to shut the operation down by calling in the police or doing whatever else. And then Mannheim, sends these forever after Superman to try and kill him to stop him from shooing the supervillains away, the reformed supervillains. That'd be a different story, right? Because now he's trying to protect his business interests and doing something illegal to do it. But no, in this case, the villains aren't dead. They're not, the life isn't over. They're just like basically depressed.
And they didn't even really go to Superman for help. They're still doing it. They want the cash. And again, you're going to play that route. And it generally isn't being full out clear, but what he's saying is that a reformed criminal is not really going to be able to do anything anyway. They're going to have to go and do some shady things like this, but they're not even doing anything wrong. They're selling the things to get money. And so in that, this is the play in a week where, this past 7 days or whatnot, we've had a lot of people yelling about what characters should and shouldn't be doing. It is kind of odd where Superman's standing there and Scorch just sends the forever reverse that Superman really doesn't know anything about. Now, they're talking a mean game. They seem sus.
They did attack him because there's a little bit of a conflict there. So they aren't angels. They're not angels.
No,
right?
They're not. But Bruno Mannheim, he's kind of seemingly doing what it reminds me of a lot of times is you have Superman. He knows Lex is bad. Lex is evil, but it's all on the boards. It's all above. And he can't do anything, and that frustrates Superman. Lex laughs, and you have that, I'll get you later, Lex, you'll slip up. But you end up with Bruno Mannheim who's now in the hell dimension going, what the hell did I do? Like, he knows that he's bad. He knows he's taking advantage of people, but Superman doesn't even ask where they went. Where'd you go? Oh, somewhere that's worse than anything you can imagine. And Superman doesn't even say, like, yeah, you're going to have to get him out of there, and we're going to have to, deal with it,
basically, Scorch sent Mannheim to hell. She basically threw him in hell, and Superman was like, okay, that's fine. No problem. He didn't try to arrest him, take him back to Stryker's Island or anything like that. He just said, look, yeah, you threw him into hell. Yeah, that's fine with me because that's where they belong.
By the end, I don't even know that Scorch is just walking around. And then when they get back, he says to Scorch, okay, you got to explain. Like when he says you have to explain things, I didn't know what he meant because everything seemed to be clear cut up to then. Then we would get the twist that it is a mystery that we didn't know. I can't tell you. I thought that the whole thing was Major Force, like, oh, he did more things bad. He did this. He was no. It ends up where you go, and I'm like, who is this? And then I remember because we were reading Harley and reviewing Harley at that point, and the idea it's this Penny She ended up in the Harley book, such an obscure character to even throw in here. And the idea is that the guy, I even forgot there was a murder at the very beginning. And so the murderer that was supposedly Major Force, it actually was Penny. And Major Force, being a good guy, is saying, my life's, done anyway. And everybody thinks I'm a piece of crap. I need you. Now, again, there's the line there of, is that
and remember, it wasn't even set up as a murder. It was set up as an accident. Like he was trying to do a robbery and the guy got killed by accident.
And the guy got killed. Well, now we find out that it full out was an accidental murder, but it was triggered by anger and power.
Manslaughter.
So, yeah, it's manslaughter, but it's still a crime. This is where I think that, and I still am convinced that the reason Eric quit the podcast is because these things kept coming up, and I kind of look at them in reality, though we're in comic books, but you still have to have that bit of comic book reality still to have it where if somebody murders somebody, they have to get the repercussions. And usually, unlike this, serial killers usually know that if they get caught, they're going to go to jail. They just don't want to get caught. This girl, she did something by accident. It's true. She flipped out and she needs help. I mean, if you're going to play a social deal, she needs help, and she's a danger to herself and others. You said to me before we even started that something has to be done to help her, but also keep everybody else safe around her. Because
I mean, if you think it through, this is almost not exactly the same. This is almost the same conversation we had last week with Detective Comics when you had Bullock all of a sudden starting spewing statistics about recidivism and crime rates and criminals not getting a fair shake and how often they return because the prison system doesn't reform them. This is almost the same conversation, right? Because he's talking about, how criminals don't deserve any fair treatment from the bad guys saying that, and the good guys saying, well, no, the prison system is not where you help people. It's kind of like that same topic of conversation. But yet at the end of it, the person who actually died in this entire 3-part mystery, which wasn't really a mystery, was killed by Penny, and she suffers no consequences for it other than she feels bad.
Even Lois thinks it's wrong.
She doesn't get arrested. She's dangerous now. Remember, the reason she killed him, the way they show it here in the flashback, is basically this Max Boykin guy yelled at her. He yelled at her and said, "Your father's a loser and get away from me. Stop bothering me." And she kills him. She gets mad and kills him. She's dangerous.
She is dangerous.
She is now dangerous. And Superman's like, well, I guess we're just going to let her live her best life because putting her in prison would be the wrong move.
Prison would make her worse, but that doesn't mean that she can kill somebody. And so even step it back in a comic booky way, the idea of this seems to be a Major Force, Penny, everybody else, Atomic Cell. They don't have, and I'm not saying they got it stolen, but they don't have a lot of hope to make a better life. Do something with that at the end. Do something with Superman, who, I mean, not spoken of to a machine. Say, listen, I know they're talking about this nonsense about your DNA and hope being gone or whatnot, but let's back up and I need to do something to give you guys hope so that you know not to do these things. But in the meantime, Penny, we're going downtown and I'm Superman. I have a lot of weight behind my name and I'm going to put it fully so that you don't just get thrown away and lock the key and forget about it. I'm going to make sure that you are treated well and go to a program or something that will help you. You need help. It's obvious. When she's talking about it, she had an awful childhood. Her dad was not nice, all this stuff going on, whatnot. We need to help everybody and go back to that hope. Go back to what you seemingly wanted to have the story be about, but got lost in the convoluted way of telling this idea of telomeres and the foreverers and off in the side of space and dimensions of hell with Scorch. It got so convoluted to then just throw this Penny thing. That's why I think it feels forced.
Well, yeah, there's also that, but also right, Penny's a super obscure character. If you have to reference an issue of Harley Quinn to bring in a character to make your story work, you're already in trouble. Harley Quinn hasn't been good for a very long time, so you're already in trouble if you're bringing in a Harley Quinn cameo character. So that's number one. Number two, if you wanted to do something better with it, you could have tied it into what's going on with All In and the absolute power fallout where everybody's like up at the watchtower and they're helping people out who got powers who shouldn't have. And they could have said, well, you are manslaughter. You committed manslaughter. We're going to bring you up to the watchtower and basically you're going to be there as a sort of rehabilitation center where they can help you. They can help train you to use your powers responsibly instead of killing people, but this is part of your sentence, or something like that. And that could have tied in, and that would have made a lot more sense. And it could have been like get her under control, but at the same time, not just let her run free to kill somebody again the next time she gets into a
she
fender
just
bender
gets
or something.
angry. Yeah, I said to you, she's at a red light and it turns green and somebody's like, "Hey, bitch, get moving." She's like, "Ah," and then blowing everybody up.
Right.
Yeah, and then it's
Ridiculous.
on Superman's hands. Now, again, an interesting part, and the only thing that if you think something had happened, but it's John Ridley and it's this 3-part story, but the Foreverers, it's left open that they could come back. They're not that interesting. I'll give one thing. I think that John Ridley actually showed me more than ever, because I never thought he had a real sense of humor. He's not a real, but calling the one guy Larry was pretty funny. That made me laugh. That's the only thing.
It was funny, but it was weird because
it was very weird, but it made me laugh.
You don't know where they're from. I mean, are they aliens? Are they from another dimension? Are they from some kind of? Are they from hell or some kind of weird thing? Why would you have an alien named Larry?
Hey, that's just his name. I don't know why you want to judge people, Gabe. I like them. They also call him Lair later.
Yeah, they call him Lair for short. Very 1970s.
They're very nice.
Very 1970s.
That's something that's left open that I don't think will ever be opened again. The Foreverers. But you never know if John Ridley shows up on something down the line. But in the meantime, the only thing that could have been cool of what you said, if they did take her to the Watchtower, again, that is kind of skirting the law a little, but they're going to take care of it. And that could come up later.
Maybe if they get the judge's permission.
No, I actually wouldn't mind if they did it. And then later, that's one of the things that could have a group say, listen, a senator or whatnot say, look, this person was murdered. They just took him up there. Like, why are they able to say that? That's an interesting thing. And in the meantime, we wouldn't have a problem with it because I know Superman's a good guy and he's going to make sure that she is treated right and they're going to figure this stuff out. But in the meantime, you get a character that's from a Harley Quinn issue from years ago and then just thrown in here at the last second to be the gist of the story. And you don't wrap up anything else because you just make Hell Dimension. And then at the end, as Superman is talking to Lois, and this is the thing, John Ridley knows that what he's doing is wrong. He knows that it's not really right because he has Lois just say, this isn't right. And Lois, to me, is the voice of reason saying she should be in jail. Superman has what we said about Bullock's his dialogue in Detective Comics. Who's talking here? When he ends up at one point, he says to Lois, can't tell you anything. I don't know what the right thing to do is. She says, is this dark days again? His response is, wish it was dark in the harsh white light of day. All I see is badness. I'm like, who is this? That sounds like a 6th grade play. That is so bad. And then she says, don't let the Foreverer steal your hope. Sometimes your greatest strength is being able to give a damn when nobody else does. And he says, lucky me.
So silly.
And then he flies away pissed.
Jim, have you ever known any married couple that talk to each other this way?
No. What I get is, even today, I get, hey, what's going on? Why the hell are you always bugging me? Why are you nagging me? That's what I got.
What'd you do
today.
to your face?
Yeah, exactly. She was very, the idea when something like that happens and I end up where I ended up getting hit by a truck and ended up going into my handlebars of it wasn't even my bike, it's my son's bike. Ended up hitting the handlebars and my teeth went through my lip and actually then split my lip completely down. It's like open. It's disgusting.
I've seen pictures. It's a horror show. It's terrible.
So, and now it's all swollen and whatnot. I'm bleeding all over the place. I come in, I'm like, oh my God. She's like, what the F did you do? Like, it wasn't even, I know that it's because she was upset to see, but she wasn't very nice. And then she's like, what is this? And then the idea that I'll get it. I probably have already talked about at the beginning of the podcast as we're recording, but the idea where I didn't have my car. That's why I was on the bike. I had to go get some groceries. My son had his car, had our car because he goes to work. And so I couldn't even go to the hospital. The hospital's like 4 miles away and that was bleeding everywhere. So I just didn't go. I actually was going to stitch it up myself last night. But amazingly, I've heard the tongue really does heal quick, but so does your lip. It's actually like, it's sealing up. It's getting better. It'll be infected. It'll be disgusting.
but now everybody in the audience knows that you are willing to sacrifice your body and physical comfort just for their viewing and listening pleasure. Yes.
I hope that they realize that I legit, what I should do is post my pop screen that now has blood on it. It's disgusting because as I'm talking, I'm ripping open my lip each step of the way. But Gabe, what would you give this?
Let's see. So I like the art. I don't like that we solved a mystery that we didn't even know was a mystery, and that Superman's moral compass is essentially broken. I mean, that's everything about this is terrible. So I gave it a 4.5 out of 10.
You said moral compass. I'm not going to say anything though, Gabe.
Yeah, is it pointing north or south?
It's south.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 4. I like the art. The art's pretty good, and the idea too. At the end, this penny mystery at the end. The other point that we haven't even, it's not even that interesting. That's the worst part, right? It's not interesting anyway. So it just ends up same old, and really does put Major Force in a better light, but you don't even play it up that way either. But we'll go to a book that we actually like. And
Yes.
I didn't talk about it ahead of the game because I'm used to Eric not giving me the info, but I'm able to read your reviews. So I know what you're all about, Gabe. And I also saw you talking in the Slack saying how much you like this issue. So I'm telling people that so they don't bail thinking we're going to be negative Nancy's on everything, because unfortunately a lot of the bigger books recently haven't been great, but this one is. It's Aquaman. It's Aquaman number 3, written by Jeremy Adams, art by John Timms, colors by Rex Locust, letters by Dave Sharp, cover by John Timms as well. And you have Marquise Draper as associate editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. And yeah, Jeremy Adams is pretty damn good. At least we have Jeremy Adams. When you end up John Ridley, the best part of John Ridley is John Ridley isn't going to be around now. He's done with this story. He'll probably pop up again later, but it's not like it's on a regular book each month. We can kind of have a reprieve there. We're lucky to have Jeremy Adams, and it's great that he has signed exclusive because the stuff's good. And John Timms' art, though, I didn't love the faces in the first issue. I'm starting to really like as well. And I always did like John Timms. But you even get a little bit, not a origin, but a little bit with his dad, which I liked. And then you go to this bigger mystery that seems to be very, very big and will continue to be very, very big. But tell me what you liked about it.
Well, let me ask you a question. So Paul Kaminsky is the overall group editor of both Action Comics and Aquaman. But one has Marquise Dupree, the other one has Brittany Holzer. One is good and the other one isn't. What do you think is the deciding factor there?
There is a deciding, but I give Jeremy Adams some credit too. But still,
Jeremy Adams gives him credit. Yes.
I'll tell you what Marquise Draper probably can say is that I bet you the only thing that he has to deal with Jeremy Adams, because I've talked to Jeremy Adams, I'm sure you have as well, the idea that Jeremy Adams makes sure that he gets things right. So I get that probably the biggest pain, and I'm saying that in air quotes for Marquise Draper, is maybe, Jeremy Adams saying, hey, are we doing this? Hey, is Aquaman in this situation? That's not what you'd be upset about as an editor. The problem with the Brittany Holzer is I think that she's off shopping or something or whatever it would be when she's supposed to be editing. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like I'm hateful.
I couldn't tell you exactly what she's doing, but she's not making great comics is what I can tell you.
And it seems like in that when you get somebody like her and you keep getting consistently the books that are really bad and the books that seem to not get the characters a lot of times end up on her, that means she doesn't really know the characters because she's supposed to be the one to stop it. She's supposed to be, wait a minute.
She's a gatekeeper.
This doesn't sound in a good way. This doesn't sound like Superman. That's not really this. And I don't think she really knows. I don't think that she knows. Not that I don't think she cares. I just think she doesn't know. And she's probably been told by higher ups, hey, don't worry about that. Probably because they're like, she ain't good with that. But you have to have some pride yourself to care about things. And that's what gets me. And I do think Jeremy Adams does care. And Marquise Draper has gone up in my eyes now. Because of all this.
I think with Jeremy Adams, we'll get to the issue in a second, but what I think with Jeremy Adams is he genuinely likes these characters. He genuinely likes DC. So when he's given an opportunity, even though it may not have been his first choice, and we know that there were some things that have come up recently where he's like, I wasn't even thinking about doing that. I kind of wanted to do this. Hint, hint. I think Jeremy Adams really wants to do Wonder Woman. If anybody would give him a shot,
he does. He told me specifically. He has a pitch that he's had for years.
The fact that they're keeping Tom King on Wonder Woman and not giving Jeremy Adams a shot at Wonder Woman is foolishness of the highest order. It's foolishness of the highest order.
Because when he went to them with the pitch, from when I remember, it was not when Tom King was already on it. It was the Clunrads, and they said, "Well, unfortunately, you can't have a guy do it," and then gave it to Tom King. It doesn't make sense.
So they are sticking to they're not giving it to a man.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Boy, controversial statement. Controversial statement.
Moly.
I'll take it.
I didn't say it.
Okay. Well,
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Holy moly.
What I like about oh my goodness.
Now you're making me laugh. You said the word funny, Gabe. You're making me laugh. You're hilarious.
Don't split your lip again. Don't split your lip again.
It is. It's all
what
over
I like about what Jeremy Adams is doing here, and we'll get into the details in a second, is he didn't say, let's tell just like an Aquaman story where he's facing Orm or the Deep or doing something that's already been done. He basically said, Arthur Curry is king of Atlantis. So why don't we take Arthur Curry and basically tell the Aquaman version of a King Arthur story? So you've got wizards, you've got mermaids, you've got,
the lady in the
witches
lake. I mean, it's
and
right
hags.
there. I mean,
You've got castles. You've got all the things. He's basically telling an Arthurian legend using Aquaman as the central hero. And it's like, well, that's something I've never seen before. And I like the way he's doing it. So yes, more please. More of that, please.
As we jump in and we have this little bit of him, learning learning from his dad, how to be a good guy. The idea that the kids in school make fun of you. Hey, your dad's lazy. He's the guy in the lighthouse. Now, in something like Amnesty Bay, I would think that most people would have that at a bit of a higher deal but they're kids. They're making fun of him.
It's a fishing town. You would think they have a high dependency on the lighthouse.
I think that there's been times where they're like, thank God we have a lighthouse and that lighthouse keeper's pretty good. But they're kids. So Arthur comes and says,
Little
Dad, the kids, really. Like you. They end up where, oh my God, they made fun of me or whatever. And of course, then we have a bit of a disaster averted. You end up having the bulb go out. They have to fix it. There's a ship coming in. That's fine. That's the bookend of showing how Arthur became a good guy who knows that it's better to do what you have to do than for what other people think. And it ties into how he gets a lot of shade from Atlanteans.
It's a little bit of a life lesson about, doing what's right when nobody's looking kind of a thing. I mean, it's very after school special, but you know what? For this purpose, it works perfectly fine.
It's fine. So when we go from there, what we do end up getting, and as this goes, because we are introduced to the Lady of the Lake, they spell out Dagon as the one who was trying to get Arthur, and we even get Dagon talking. We'll get back to that, but we do get pretty much a history lesson by our man Arian, and when we get this, I like it, and people might say, "But Jim, you hated that thing." This almost the same kind of concept in the New Gods book, but the problem is, this is written as a fable. This is written almost like a kid's story, just a fantasy type story that you end up explaining some things very quickly in a very easy way, but feels like it's like, a fable. And it fits, like you said, the whole concept of King Arthur. So when I get that, I like the way that he did it. I don't need it to be fancy, and it's not that fancy. And when you end up talking at the beginning and said that Jeremy Adams likes the characters, all this, you know what else he likes? He loves comics. And at one point when he was kicked off of Flash, I talk about this all the time.
Travesty.
Talking to me and saying, this is the way he thought he was out of comics. He thought he finally got to do what he wanted to do. He's in the animation thing, but he wanted to do comics. He finally got a shot. And somehow, even though people were telling him how great it was, it's over. He didn't know what to do and said to me, I wish that I was able to get a bit of a name because I can't even go and do creator-owned stuff. I just don't have a big enough name now, and I think that I'm done, and it just upsets me. He still has work and whatever, and is going to do his other stuff, but he really wanted to do it. So it just showed me this wasn't a guy who said, yeah, I just gave it a shot, and he really was upset, and now he's able to do it, and you see, he loves comics, and he wants to write comics, and this is something people will laugh. You may even laugh, Gabe, not as much as I laugh what you said about Tom King, but the idea, at one point, I actually thought the way that he's writing here and the way that I like it, I actually thought that of Tom Taylor before Tom Taylor seemed to go on Twitter.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm crying at that statement.
That Injustice stuff and that Batman. Do you read the Batman Superman story that he did, like a 3-parter in the New 52? It's great. Okay. And it wasn't
that fell apart real quick. He hasn't done anything like that since.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He seemingly then, and also remember, Tom Taylor, the stuff that he does Elseworlds, people still like. So there's that there. But when he gets in the regular continuity, he seems to worry because he used to be known as the guy who kills everybody. Oh my God, Tom Taylor's on a book. Somebody's going to die. And I think it went to his head and he's like, oh, I'm going to go the reverse and I'm really going to show this and I'm going to get people.
Yeah, now he doesn't even punch anybody.
No, that's what I'm saying. At one point, he seemed to just be like, I'll write some. There were points, if people don't want to admit it, they can go to hell. They can get scorched and sent to the hell dimension. When we used to, in the Slack years ago, say, hey, who do you want to have on a book? Who do you want to have? At one point, Tom Taylor was the biggest pick for Justice League. But all these things because he was doing some cool stuff. Then it just went wonky. He doesn't want to tell stories and ends up where it's just pretty much a message instead of a story. But the thing, I just went, Jeremy Adams likes writing comics, and you can tell. It's fun. It ends up...
But here's the other thing that Jeremy Adams does, which I appreciate. Sometimes he does it a little too much, but I appreciate that he does make an effort. He takes pieces from, if he's writing a particular character, he takes pieces from previous stories from other writers and tries to work them in to make sense out of them. This whole thing with the blue and the blue being sort of like the tether or the thread that connects worlds, a lot of that came from Brandon Easton when he did that Future State story with grown-up Jackson Hyde and grown-up Andy and did all that stuff where they were traveling through the different worlds by going underwater and finding these portals. A big chunk of that came from that story. So he takes those stories and tries to bring them in and make better sense of them.
And that was even from The Clear. That was the thing from before.
Is that from The Clear?
It all builds on each other. And
he's doing the same thing in Green Lantern when he's working in everything with the Revenant Queen and Tharos and all that stuff. In my opinion, that one he should leave alone. Please don't bring in Olgrim.
Olgrim's coming back this summer.
Come on.
And that's the thing.
I appreciate he's respecting the previous writer.
He's not bringing it back. It's Phil Kennedy Johnson that's going to bring it back. It's his stuff.
My point is, he seems to want to be respectful to what the previous creator's done and trying to bring them in and try to make sense of it and incorporate it into his mythology. So I give him a lot of props for doing that. Sometimes he goes too far. Nobody cares about the Revenant Queen. That story went nowhere. He could have just let that alone. Everybody would be fine. But the fact that he's at least making an effort to bring that in, I think is a big kudos and big props on him for trying to do that.
And some of the things that people like Philip Kennedy Johnson, that Olgrim stuff is going to come back in the House of L book. That'll be
nobody
later.
Cares. I don't care
nobody
about that.
Nobody cares. They want the House of L, but they do not want the Olgrim. But what you're saying about Jeremy Adams, Philip Kennedy Johnson's quite like that as well, much to his detriment, is because when he jumped on the Action Comics stuff and he did the War World stuff, first off, he ended up having supposedly get the Grant Morrison stuff and envelope that in. But also the idea that Mongol is not a war zone, but Brian Michael Bendis messed it up and said he was. And so Philip Kennedy Johnson made sure that he even in story took time to justify that. And when I asked him, he said, I know that it was a mistake, but it was there. And I'm going to make it because I respect, the person who came before me. So I give them credit. Sometimes it doesn't work out, like you said.
I'd rather they just say that, it was a mistake or it's of the mind or some kind of way to basically undo the mistake rather than trying to memorialize
it would be
the
better,
mistake. It's like, we always meant to say that. No, just don't. It's okay to say that it was a mistake. I mean, John Kent's sitting right there. I can undo that pretty quickly. It doesn't have to see that way forever, but stuff like that.
Just keep going with it. But in this, you do have that whole, like you said, it is pretty much King Arthur and the idea that this is going on. And Aquaman, he's trying to find Mary. He's trying to find Atlantis. He's trying to find everyone. Mm-hmm. And he's in this just, frozen landscape now. But they end up where you have the Lady of the Lake and Aryan, and they're going to be able to forge him a weapon. The biggest thing is he doesn't have his trident, so they're going to end up forging him a weapon. In the meantime, you do get that, hey, this is how this all ties together, the blue, and how this does make everything connected. And it makes sense. I mean, I like the idea in an Aquaman book that you say that water's pretty cool. It's pretty magical. It ends up giving life. It ends up all that. So it should be a little bigger, and I do like tying it in with the red and the green. I know that some people lose their minds when they add things like this, but this felt like it's, like you said, it's continuing on something, but it doesn't feel forced. It feels right. It feels cool, and I think it feels really cool for, say, Aquaman, obviously. But in the meantime, you do have this Dagon, and he's just kind of sitting there just waiting and waiting, and he really wants Aquaman. He thinks he could be a good vessel to do his doing, and he ends up getting these mermaids, one being Laurie Lamaris, which is kind of shocking to me. But you end up
because we just saw her in World's Finest, last week,
and that would be the past because of the crazy timeline thing of that. But I don't ever think of her as being bad. So in that was a weird play. And they do reference that as well. But
Yep.
the idea where Aquaman, is a little wary. He wants to get going. He wants to do things, whatnot. But then there's the mention of the Dark Tide and all these, the Omega Gate. There's a lot going on. But I think that he's doing a good job of kind of letting it, some things kind of lie. They're interesting. And it's building up by the end of this. Then it's really like, oh, God, what are they going to do? But in the meantime, they're going to build him. They're going to forge him a weapon. The Lady of the Lake is going to do that, and they need his blood. But it's kind of forced the idea. You can't be in here while we're doing it, but it's fine. It sets them out. But you go from there because that's where they show up, and Laurie shows up. And it's done well to send her because Aquaman's going to know her and go, hey, what's up? And let her get close.
It's a bit of hand waving to say, oh, you wait outside while we forge this. Now, again, when I say this is a King Arthur legend, this is Vivian. She's called the Lady of the Lake. What do? They go to a lake. Why are they there? Because Arthur needs this ultimate weapon, just like Excalibur. And they're forging it in the middle of the lake. And so while he's waiting, what happens? Laurie comes through this portal that looks like an alpha. So he got to this land from a portal that looks like an omega. Now he's got another portal that's opening up that looks like an alpha. And here comes this Laurie with her friends. She's a mermaid. And she's like, hey, Pally, how are you? And shoop, right through the gut, she stabs him. And it turns him into, basically, it freezes him in ice. And she takes him away to Dagon. So, this is all the same kind of, very classical, I would say Eastern European, but Western European type of old folk tales and legends about knights in shining armor, and I really like that a lot.
I do too.
Yeah. So and even you can say Dagon, which when I hear Dagon, I hear Lovecraft, right? That's a Lovecraft kind of monster, but at the same time, you could make a little twist and say, well, Dagon is very close to dragon, so you have a knight that's going to slay the dragon with a special weapon, and sure, the whole thing just comes together.
Yep, and I think that at some point, the visual will probably be that Aquaman's stuck somewhere, and all of a sudden, Vivian will throw her hand through the ice, and the weapon will be there, and he'll be able to grab it as if it's the Lady of the Lake kind of deal as well. And this is the thing too. Even if you don't get that, even if you don't know anything about it, it's still good. And the idea that I never feel in this, there's again, I know that you like to really lay in on Tom King with your.
Oh my goodness.
Idea, there are times when Tom King does things, but they feel like he's ripping things off instead of homaging them or telling them as a fable type of deal. This doesn't feel like, oh, he took a shortcut, he's doing this. It feels really cool. It feels classy. It feels big.
It's got a lot of familiar elements, but it's put together in an original way. And it feels like it makes sense. The way the changes feel like they make sense for Aquaman as a character and Atlantis and everything that he's encouraging it. So it's sort of like, if you told the story about Batman as an example, and he, kind of like the way that they did like Gotham by Gaslight as an example, where you took Batman and you put him in a familiar setting, but it still felt right for Batman. There's a lot of that. You could almost say this is an Elseworld story, but it still fits within the main continuity.
Yeah, and I like the idea of adding the blue and giving you a little background. That actually ups it to be its own thing as well. So that sets it really well. So in that Aquaman, he gets taken. He ends up being turned to ice. They get him on this boat and take off. In the meantime, you have Arian and Vivian. They make this weapon. They're like, all right, let's go get Arthur. And when they go out, because they want to make him, like you said, basically, we want him to be King Arthur. We want him to be the Shining Knight. He's going to be their vessel, but their weapon to go against Dagon. In the meantime, Dagon's got him, and they realize you end up Arian's like, oh no. And then you cut back to the life lesson from Aquaman as a younger kid with his dad, which is good, where he says, I strive to be like this lighthouse, to serve those out there, to stand tall in the storms and light the way home for anyone in the darkness, no matter what. Understand? And Arthur says, yes, I do. His dad gives him that lesson to do the right thing and to keep going and do your calling as well. In the meantime, he is captured and they have him chained up and they're taking him to Dagon. And he finds out at the end and it's just left there. And it's really cool. It really is cool. It feels big. It makes... It's one of those things. People have been begging for an Aquaman book for a while. We had the Aquaman. That wasn't so great. And I'm not just saying because it was Jackson Hyde and that. I'm just saying the stories weren't good and they really weren't played out. They didn't feel like they were big. This feels big. And you're doing a mythical type thing. And then Kelly Thompson tried to do that. Not Kelly Thompson, Kelly Sue DeConnick, when she did but that was
with the wedding and everything else?
That was a mess. No, remember when there was the gods on that forgotten island and the other dimension? It was a mess. It never went anywhere. I liked it for a while. It just went nowhere. This already in 3 issues feels huge. And tying it in little ways where even Aquaman says, you know what? They're saying all these things and Darkseid's gone. So I don't know. I hope I'm not a vessel for Darkseid. Like even throwing that in as a little like, oh, I hope that's not it. I don't think it is. But you end up where even tying it in that way is pretty cool. But what would you give it?
And I'll add one more comment about this. Actually two. The first one is Aquaman tends to get a bad rap because like you can't do anything with him unless he's inside the ocean, unless he's in the water and doing something with water creatures and big animals and whales and whatever else. This is putting him in an aquatic or an ocean themed adventure story that's technically speaking not in the water, and it still works. So let's just be a tip off right there that he doesn't have to be pigeonholed. You just have to have the right approach. You have to have the right idea. The second thing is, which was my complaint or my criticism, if you read the review, you can check it out for yourself, is the prophecy seems like weirdly vague. They keep talking about the dark tide, and Arian mentions the dark tide in one way, but Dagon mentions the dark tide in a different way, and without actually seeing the prophecy written down or somebody somebody kind of like reciting the prophecy. Everybody's talking around the prophecy, but nobody's actually telling you what's in it or what it's supposed to do or who it is. So I think on that one, Adams is being a little too vague. And after 3 issues, he's being coy. He's keeping it close to the chest or whatever else. And it's starting to get a little bit confusing because people keep referencing the prophecy without actually telling you what the prophecy is. And like, after 3 issues, we should know what the prophecy is by now. Now you could word it in such a way that here's the prophecy, and maybe it's open to interpretation, and maybe that's you think it's going to go one way, but sure, do it that way. But that by not reciting it at all, it's a little bit of fun down on that one. Not a big one, just a little one. So for Aquaman number 3, I gave it an 8.8 out of 10. I like it. I like it a lot. I want to see Adams doing more of this. And my recommendation is DC writers, more of them should be paying attention to what Adams is doing with this series and also with Green Lantern, because he takes lemons, he makes lemonade, and it tastes pretty darn good. So I want to see more of that.
I don't think I could drink lemonade right now. It would hurt like hell. It would hurt real bad. But I'm giving it a 9. I'm higher than you, just a little bit. But yeah, I really like it. I'm enjoying it. And I like Aquaman. I ended up with my first book that I fully started reading any sort of series was Jeff Johns' beginning of the New 52 when I jumped in the comics.
If you had to kind of jump at me and say, what are the best series that DC are putting out right now, at least 2 of the top 3 or 5 belong to Jeremy Adams. And there's a reason for that, because he's putting in the effort. He's doing the research, he's putting in the effort, and he's trying to tell you a really good story that means he cares about the characters. We're not getting enough of that right now.
No, we're not. It seems like the idea of people being assigned characters, they're doing it just to do it. It's a job, whatnot. You can tell when somebody really has the enthusiasm and really cares about it and really wants to do it. And Jeremy Adams obviously wants to. So with all of that, thanks for joining me, Gabe.
Thank you, Mushmouth.
Sus as hell. But we will be going off. I don't know. I think that we're going to be going off to Green Lantern Corps right now, a book that there has been some debate of whether or not Jeremy Adams is fully writing or just advising.
I think he's supporting. I don't think he's the main guy.
I think so too. So me and Simon supposedly is going to be drunk. So we'll see that. We'll have Mushmouth and Drunk Ass is the name of our detective duo. But
everybody's slurring their words.
Yeah, really. I wish I wasn't, but that is that. So thanks, Gabe, and we'll go off to that right about now. And as I guessed, I am here with Simon. What up, Simon?
What up, Jim?
What up is your alcohol content?
My blood alcohol level is significantly up right now, yes.
But the last time, and people, if you're not on our Patreon, they wouldn't have heard you. You did the spotlight with me last week, I believe it was. And
yeah, it was last week, and I was a bit under the weather last week. I wasn't particularly healthy, and now I'm still on the tail end of being unhealthy, but I've been out drinking now, so everyone can be slightly happier that I am more drunk than I am.
Yeah, I will tell you right now, you're definitely more drunk than last week. And now I didn't even make the equation there, because people did say And people, was Simon really drunk? Like they thought I was lying. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think he was, but I don't think he was that drunk.
The
Not
big feedback
realizing
from
that you
2
were-
weeks ago was like, has he drunk that much? Like, that doesn't seem real. And then the big feedback from a week ago was, drunk Simon is more entertaining than ill Simon. We get drunk Simon back.
Each time we go, you're getting drunker. It seems, and I think that because you're on the mend, you must have drank a lot more, or it ended up because
yeah.
this is the best. This is the best book that for the entire year.
Also,
I believe.
yeah, on the other side, we're actually reviewing a half decent book for once rather than complete garbage, which helps.
I will tell you, and this is, you are slurring a little, but so am I, because my stupid lips. So we're right in. We could see who sounds more drunk. I'm not drunk, but a bunch of people ended up. I did not take any painkillers because I was afraid that if I did, I'd be a mess. There's no way. So when we're done, well, Jimmy Boy's going to La La Land is what's going to happen here. But even then, I have to get up early to talk to Grace, so I may not. And the thing that happened with me or whatever, I have a pretty good tolerance for pain. And usually, as Eric would tell you back in the, I always feel like crap anyway. So yeah, back in the day, 4 weeks ago. Here we are, though. We do have a good book. And it actually surprised me. And some people might be surprised that it surprised me because Jeremy Adams is involved. But I was told that this book was more from the mind of Jeremy Adams. Like Jeremy Adams was there to guide more.
I do find it interesting that the credits are Hampton and Adams. Like, it's not like one of them did the story and the other one did the writing. Because, somehow you get that split in the creative team that it's like, oh, someone did the broad outline of the story and someone then did the rest of it.
And it seems like Jeremy Adams is the broad.
Yeah, like how outline. Snyder and Tinian used to work together.
That was the thing that reminds me, because at one point when you had Batman and Robin Eternal, that was a Tinian. That was a tiny deal. And Scott Snyder, even when I talked to him, I'm like, oh, what's this and that? And he's like, I just gave him an outline. Like I gave him basis.
Like my name was attached to it purely for sales reasons.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And so this is why I even said in the first issue of this Green Lantern Corps that it's actually, if you are a Jeremy Adams fan, it's very impressive, I think, because at one point he was worried that he wasn't going to be writing comics, let alone just at DC, just overall, because the Flash, he ended up being told, hey, you're done with that. And before he got the Green Lantern book, which was supposed to go to Mariko Tamaki, and know that there's a big fight that people think that Jeremy Adams stole it from it. That's not the case. They ended up where something went wrong, and then they asked Jeremy Adams, and only because, hey, he doesn't have a book, so let's just ask him. He was really worried that he was going to be out of comics, and now he's at a point where they legit sign him exclusive and seem to put him on a book here, so it might sell a little better because Morgan Hampton doesn't really have a name, and not a big fan. Morgan Hampton ended up writing that Cyborg series, which I thought was a wreck.
Is that the only thing that Morgan Hampton has done?
Yeah. Morgan Hampton is somebody who has
done anything at, like,
not that
Marvel,
I know of.
He's not done anything at Indie.
For the most part that I've seen, Morgan Hampton was part of a website, did some reviews and things like that. And so it's great. That's the dream of some people. I'm telling you, I even thought that the way that I would, and of course, this will sound mean or whatever, but when anything happens, say Eric leaves the podcast, there is a bit of me that gets really angry. And I just hope the next week.
3 weeks from now, you hear an announcement that Eric Shea's been signed on as a writer.
Me to be contacted so I can rub it in his face. But that's the thing. If they did contact me, I'll tell you right now, if they said, Jim, we want to do Weird Science, whatever, I'd say, that's not my thing, and I would tell them to get a hold of Eric. I really don't.
You're not like dreading a scenario where he couldn't tell you he quit the podcast because he's been signed on as a DC writer.
It's one of those things. It's the classic of so many people end up being involved in getting lottery tickets at work because they know the one time they don't get the lottery ticket, everybody will win and you'll be the schmuck who's stuck working. But no, I actually would tell them to get Eric. It's not my thing. I really don't want to write comics. I like reading them. I'd love to be an editor, but I don't really want to write them. But
honestly, it's genuinely a different skill. Like,
it's not
writing and critiquing are two different skills entirely. Like, just because you're a good critic doesn't make you a good writer. I'm not saying you're a good critic, Jim. Don't take that to the fucking bank.
I actually already had a big smile on my face and it hurt my mouth. I was so happy. I'm like, oh my God, even that, you say that. just as I got done right before you, I did the spotlight with Rocky from Comic Boom. And he ended up at the beginning saying that he really likes to review things with me because it means that he has to be on his toes. And he has to read things extra because he has to bring more of a game. And I laughed. I was like, really? Like, that's what you get? I just yelled stuff.
That's an interesting take, isn't it?
And now you were saying just now, I heard that you said I was a great reviewer. I'm like, holy moly. Like, everybody's giving me my flowers, as the kids say. But here we are. I don't even know what we were talking about. Morgan Hampton. I didn't like the Cyborg series.
Jeremy Adams, Green Lantern Corps issue 2.
If this is him, though, I mean, it actually is pretty good, and I'll say that I'm impressed so far. It could all go to hell, but I'm impressed.
If this is genuinely more Morgan Hampton than Jeremy Adams, he's doing a
good job.
Bang-up job. He genuinely is.
Drunk Simon curses.
Yeah.
Listen to you.
I curse a lot, Jim.
We don't curse a lot on the Hellboy thing, even though you say Hellboy.
Yeah, like, I'm genuinely pretty sober when we record that. So,
yeah, that is true.
And I bite my tongue. But
I like to call it Heck Boy because I'm a good boy. Green Lantern Corps number 2.
H-E double
Morgan Hampton and Jeremy Adams writing. Fernando Passeron on pencils. And boy, the art is really, really good. Claire Albert on inks. Arif Briano colors. Dave Sharp on letters. Mwah. Actually, I was just going to joke about the letters, but it does a good job when you end up having Sorrow Lantern Nate. So actually, the letter is more important than usual.
Lettering's a difficult job because it's one of those situations where if they do a bad job, you'll notice it. If they do a good job, you're not going to even pay attention to it. So
it's like a referee in the football games that you watch over in England. You don't want to
even the soccer games as you watch in America.
Soccer, yeah, which nobody but Ruben watches, but that's fine. I actually watch more Premier League than anything over here. We also have editing, assistant editor Julian Grant, Kathleen Wisniewski editing, and Paul Kaminsky on the group editor. So we jump into this, and that's a shout. I have to say it every time. That's for Yaya. So we end up going in, but I have some commentary this week twice about editing, so I think he'll really get a kick out of it. But in this, you end up having some of the core. You have John Kilowog Razor, who's a newly made Green Lantern because the Red Lanterns don't have a power battery. And you also have Hawkwoman that they're going to Thanagar. I know that you want to get her to go to Thanagar because of what has happened and all that, but it almost feels like it's like rubbing it in. I don't know why. You know what I mean? She wants to go there, but it's really destroyed.
The weird thing about this book and the previous issue is, like, the previous issue we had Blackfire, who just wanted to fuck Jon Stewart. Like, that's all she wanted to do. And then here we reintroduce Shaira, whose entire purpose in this book is, like, to just fuck Jon Stewart. So, like, next issue, I'm like, who's going to show up to just want to fuck Jon Stewart?
I thought maybe next is you.
Yeah, or maybe Blaze. Like, Blaze is just like, oh, hey, Jon Stewart, like, you're attractive. Like, do you want to? Well, like, I don't know.
Here's the thing. Most people might guess because of the past that Jeffrey Thorne will show up to fuck Jon Stewart. There's a joke for you. So you end up where they go, and you do play out. It's weird. Kilowog has very quick dialogue at the very beginning. It's like, how's that? What's that? Like, he's a weird play, but I do like him as this goes on. And actually,
I was a little bit unsure about Kilowog's inclusion in this team to start with, but like he pulls it out in the end.
He does pull it out. And I will say,
the show.
If you pick the team here, it really works. Razor's there, which really helps out because they end up having the Red Lanterns there. But Kilowog actually does play out, and there's a couple things in this issue that they might expand on later, but I wish they would have expanded on a little, especially with Kilowog and losing all of his people and things like that. If you know Kilowog, then you'll know that. You'll know when he says later, I have all this sorrow. But it's not spelled out to somebody who might not know that. And I wish he would have just had a little bit more of a dialogue there. And one of the things that seems really smart, because we're going to get the Red Lanterns, and the Red Lanterns, if you're aware, they don't have hearts. Their hearts are taken, and they end up having the rage.
There's a real core part of the Red Lantern mythology.
And so when you become not a Red Lantern, you die. You do not have a heart. Yeah. One of the biggest plays was Supergirl was a Red Lantern. She flew into the sun, and it regenerated her heart. It was a little wonky, right?
Yeah, a little bit bullshit.
It was cool. It was cool. But the idea of this issue, and I'm guessing, I don't think I've ever asked you, but the Charles Soule Red Lantern book in the New 52 was a book that it suddenly became like, oh my God, this is a really good book. Like some of these side books didn't work out as well.
That New 52 launch of the Red Lanterns genuinely turned that entire core into a big thing.
Like stars. Like people
like genuine stars. Like genuinely, like nobody... Because obviously the Red Lanterns were a thing beforehand. They'd been part of the various, like, Rainbow Corps wars that Jeff Johns had done beforehand. But putting them in terms of their own books, like Bleeze and Atrocitus and Dexter and Zelia Sox, like, these all became, like, genuine characters people gave a shit about. And that eventually led to, like, Guy Gardner joining the Corps.
Yeah, he was in the Corps too on Supergirl, but Guy Gardner was good in the Red Lanterns.
The Red Lanterns were a genuinely thing that everybody was really excited about. And like,
I'll tell you right now, if you had a list and you asked me biggest surprises or biggest hits of the New 52 characters or whatnot,
right up there, Red Lantern. And like
Zelia Sox became huge.
There is an upcoming Red Lanterns omnibus from the New 52 era that I am sat here going like, I do think I'm
You're going to have to pull the trigger
still. Do I want to spend a significant amount of money on buying a Red Lanterns omnibus? Because like they're not great comics. Like they're not like blow your mind out like, oh shit, I didn't realize comics could be this good. But they were fun. They were so exciting, and they were just doing things with characters you didn't care about until this comic.
One of the funniest things, and I don't remember the Green Lantern name, but there's the cube. There's that Green Lantern that's like a cube. And there was a bunch of times where this was between Zilius, who is a ball,
it was
and
just
it was like this whole thing about ball versus cube and the philosophy of life. And it was like things like that were so good. And again, people, and I used to, that was when we didn't have a podcast or anything like that, but I would listen to a lot of podcasts. And at that point, like when the Red Lantern book came out, it was just Zelia Sox and people just loved them. And then even
again, like during the New 52 as well, like I'm talking over the span of years, but they weren't afraid of like throwing, as we've already discussed, Guy Gardner into the New 52, into the Red Lanterns. Like Supergirl into the Red Lanterns. Like they were willing to put people into these situations to experience the Red Lantern Corps because the Red Lantern Corps was that popular.
Atrocitus, I believe, part of the New Guardians. There was a lot of stuff going on.
And cool. Like I think it was Bleeze in the New
Guardians. Bleeze was in it too. So you had that stuff going on. So I really liked it. And the only reason I brought it up, mainly, to pretend that I'm a learned fellow, but also because
Jim, you've been around a long time now. You can pretend. You don't have to pretend to be a learned fellow.
Well, what this does, though, I kind of got the fun when I saw these characters again. I didn't realize how much I missed them.
Yeah, this book genuinely brings around a lot of the excitement of that early New 52 era when the New 52 Green Lantern was. Yeah, but it was also building off of the Jeff Johns era. Like, it wasn't starting out completely from scratch.
No. They didn't get rid of the continuity. And Jeff Johns was doing the Green Lantern book, so he's still doing that. And you had
existing characters just building off of their existing motivations, and this is what this book is doing. Like, you've got all of these Red Lanterns coming through in this issue, and you know them, but they're only playing bit parts in this story, but because they're playing bit parts and they're doing it in a way that is new and fresh, it's genuinely exciting.
I liked it. And I got so excited.
Bleeze shows up in like 4 panels, and she just does nothing, but it's really exciting to see her there. It is. It's genuinely exciting.
And now the big play, again, we said that when you're a Red Lantern and the battery blows up.
Bang John Stewart next issue.
Probably. That's who it will be. Also, it plays out. Bleeze always has a problem with Atrocitus and vice versa. And people might look at continuity and say, well, I thought this and whatever. This seems like after the death metal, things reset, the timeline opens. So we're just going to, there's some of these characters that might be dead, some of these, but we're just going to play it. And the idea,
yeah, you can always nitpick continuity and go, well, this character, blah, 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 blah. But who cares? Like, fundamentally,
Eric's not here. The hell with that.
Fuck it. Like, bring the characters in. Let's do something fun. Let's blow it open.
I like Drunk Simon. You're getting me
Everybody
fired
likes
up. Drunk Simon is the best.
Let's have a
So,
good time.
we were talking about the idea that if they do end up, the power battery's done. So when you say, oh my God, well, they must be dead, whatever. It does seem, I don't know how quick, whatever they do, but they do seem, they kind of, Atrocitus is about to say it and doesn't, but the idea they have suits on, almost like Iron Man
they're all
suits.
wearing like BDSM gear.
And they're all doing it.
And that's, I think genuinely that's one of my favorite parts of this issue is not just that the Red Lanterns show up and we've got Bleeze and we've got Atrocitus and Dexter and all of these people, is that they're showing up in BDSM gear because it feels so right.
Well, it feels right
so
for them.
Good.
Now, in the meantime, they have these power suits, like you said, that look like BDSM gear. That you see the heart, it is keeping them alive, but they need a power source. And this is kind of where you end up having the Green Lantern Corps going there to survey, okay, what's left? What are we going to do with Thanagar? And you have a couple things that, again, I don't mind because I've been reading this and we know some background and things like that about the idea where they share even hints like, we have to be with our enemies and we have to do that. Well, that's, the Adam Strange and the stuff there. They're there and they have to rely on them. It's not really spelled out, but you have that. So when you get to this and they say, we're there, people, I hope they don't get confused that it wasn't done. This was done by Mogo. They say it in there. He was all raged out.
A couple of times, like the destruction of Thanagar is down to Mogo and what happened during that situation.
When they're there, they're not there to say, oh my God, we heard the Red Lanterns were going and scavenging. They don't know that that's really, when they get there, they figure it out. But they're not really, I mean, in the all roundabout way, they're not really doing anything quite so bad, except that, Thanagar's in ruins and they're trying to find cement, but they're actually doing it to stay alive.
Nobody knows what the motivations of the Red Lanterns are when they show up there. Like, they don't know that the Red Lanterns are even the cause of the problem. They're just sent there because it's Thanagar and something's happening at Thanagar. So they go to investigate it. And then
the Red Lanterns just happen to be there.
The Red Lanterns happen to be there, and they don't know why they're there or what they're doing. And by the end of this issue, we don't know why they're there or what they're doing.
It seems like Atrocitus really wants nth metal, but we don't know why.
They're excited about they're excited about the discovery of this large chunk of nth metal. That seems to be what they're after. And then when we cut back to the ship, we find out that Shaira says that they're using nth metal to siphon off the power from Zilius Zox. So
you can make the inference art, right?
The art's incredible. But you can make the inference that that's why they're after the nth metal. Like they're already using nth metal to siphon it off from Zilius Zox. So if they get more nth metal, then they can do more siphoning.
And the worst part of it, there's Zilius. And if you do know Zilius, he does look a little bit bigger.
He just looks like he's struggling with a really big shit the entire time.
It does look like that. A big mad ball that has to take a shit. So he's there.
Not the best look.
And when they go in, they're like, oh my God, it's Zilius Zox. And when you see the red deal. And again, this is what's keeping them all alive. And they do spell out that with this rage and uncontrolled deal, he will blow up. So what's happening here is they are kind of going like, this is a really bad situation, but how can we make it good? Well, they're siphoning off his rage.
Yeah, like this continuously exploding bomb that they're using. Like they found a way to siphon off just enough of his power to stop him from completely exploding.
And keeping them alive in the process. He is like, he's a living power battery to them in this weird way. Now, in that, Atrocitus can make constructs that are doing that. It seems like that might be a bit limited, especially with the others.
Yeah, and again, you'll notice, artistically, all of his constructs come from the heart, which is all wired in, so all the power is coming from Zilius Zox into Atrocitus, into his heart, and then he brings the constructs out. And his constructs are very simple, they're very, brutal, they're not, deep or complex in any particular way. It's just the absolute bare minimum he can get away with because they're running on.
Oh yeah, they're running on empty. They're running on Zilius Zox, and even when
the others are doing it, like Bleeze, the monkey, everybody else that is running around. None of them are projecting any kind of rage projections. It's only Atrocitus that is doing it.
Yeah, there's only, it seems, enough energy to keep them alive, and Atrocitus is going to do his things. But at this point, while they're doing this, it also comes to be that Atrocitus might not just be getting the nth metal for Zillia Sox and that stuff, because when Nate shows up, he's there to get nth metal, and it seems like this is one of the things, like they want to build a battery. I mean, they're going to want to rebuild their power battery. In the meantime, normally that would be a bad thing.
Rebuild the power
and that's
battery.
What I'm saying. That's cool because they're the Red Lanterns. They're an enemy. But they just want to live.
The question is Nate showing up for the same reason as the Red Lanterns, because they have, is it separate people showing up in the same
ingredients
situation?
of trying to get the battery, and I think that this would be one of them. But in the meantime, even if it's not a battery that you would think they'd want to eventually, but they're desperate to stay alive.
We established in the previous issue that Nate wants to create a power battery for the Sorrow.
And the Sorrow deal,
whatever we want to call it. So are they mining nth metal because they want to create a new Red Lantern battery, and Nate just happens to show up because he wants nth metal?
Yeah.
Or are they working towards a converging goal because they both want?
Yeah, we'll have to see. And it's crazy because, again, some of the things that I think are they are subtle. The idea where Atrocitus, when he sees the Green Lanterns and he freaks out and says, "You guys screwed us. You guys
you did this. Like, the situation we're in is entirely because of you."
Atrocitus thinks that the batteries have been taken down just by the Green Lantern, or thinks that maybe the Green Lanterns were idiots and let the Theros go and whatever it would be, but he blames them for the battery and is about to say, you almost killed us. He doesn't go full out, but you see through the art that they are being kept alive, and that's a smart play. And if you didn't know that about the Red Lanterns, you still have cool, like you said, BDSM gear, which Bleeze always has that. I mean, she's just
she's always had it from the start. But if anything, weirdly, she's the one that's toned down from.
Yeah, really, it's weird. But you also, like I said, Dexstar is a huge hit. Like, you'd see these things, and I'm like, that is really cool. And then in the story, when Atrocitus does show up, he starts to, he does these very simple constructs, but he's attacking. And that's where Kilowog.
But that one panel where he's lies and he flings out and he's got the Mason shield, that just looks incredible. That's
and there's really cool onomatopoeia. You end up where Nate shows up, and it's first Razor who goes there's no, reason. Yeah. Once you see the change of the word bubble, you realize it's happening. So when you end up having Nate, Sorrow Lantern, say to Kilowog, "Hey, listen, you're all sad and whatever," and he smashes him, and it says smash, and he says basically, I got over worrying and getting upset about things. Really bad shit has happened to me all my life.
You can't make me sad. I've been through too much shit. We're gonna.
And he's the last of his deal, so it makes sense. And this has been something that, if you go, and I wish I remembered the exact issue, but there are issues where he does deal with that. Quite like Hal even dealt with Coast City back in the day and stuff like that. So Kilowog I think there was one issue I read, he even had an option to maybe bring some things back. And he said, no, that's not right, even though it kind of killed him. So you have that going, and he just smashes Nate. And Nate, it's funny because Nate is underneath the crumbling down Thanagar and says, "I don't understand." And Kilowog goes, "Yeah, just thinking about it for a while. I'm out of here." Just sayonara, sucker. And then goes and gets Razor, because Razor's still freaking out. And it's a really good moment. There's a lot of really cool moments.
Honestly, this issue has a lot of really small moments. And it goes back to the last issue as well. There was a lot of small issues in the last issue. Small moments in the last issue that really stood out. And
I think this one's just really good.
I'm hoping that continues to be a strong point of the entire series, is that there's just small character moments that stick true to who these second, third tier characters, no disrespect to Kilowog, but this isn't a Kilowog series. Yeah, this isn't Kilowog issue 2. This is Green Lantern Corps issue 2, headlined by John Stewart. So when Kilowog has a great standout moment, that's a sign of really strong writing.
And this is coming off Kilowog being, taken by Theros, and even where you had Hal think there's a lot of stuff, but now Kilowog's Kilowog. And he's really good. And again, usually what you get with Kilowog is oh man, new recruits, better watch out for Kilowog. Hey, you posers!
Yeah, you
losers!
posers.
It's always sad.
I'm the big training guy. I'm gonna make your life hell for a couple of weeks. Burp.
You know what's cool about this? He kind of there for Razor because he's new, but you don't have to have that big. Okay, they're posers. I'm gonna get it's
He's
really
absolutely there to look over Razor to make sure Razor does his job. But at the same time, when the Sorrow Lantern shows up and starts doing his shit, Kilowog has his time to shine. He's like, no, this doesn't work on me. I'm too big for that. I've accepted that the world is a bad place long ago, and so your powers have no effect on me.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, it is the Kilowog show. And when you would say, oh my God, maybe I want a little more Hawkwoman, but we're still involved in the story because Jon Stewart and Aquaman are kind of on the side. They discover Zilius. They end up yelling.
Yeah, they sneak around the ship. They hang out in a closet and they try not to make out.
Dexter walks by. It was so cool. I love it. Even he has his little outfit now because they have to keep themselves alive. So that's
Dexter. You can't have a Red Lantern's anything without Dexter.
Yeah, really.
Right? Yeah.
The little Dexter deal. And so, it's really good. And then at the end, again, when Nate comes, he's kind of left behind a bit. And I do also like Atrasis is still busy fighting John and Shaira. And the other Lanterns Bleezes, that they're on the comms. What the hell? Atrasis, shit's going wrong. They're just yelling, Atrasis, something's happening. Hurry up. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. And he's in the middle of fighting. And actually, at that point, is taking care of both Shaira and John. I mean, really beating the crap out of him at that point.
Yeah, like, this is the incredible thing about this depiction of Atrocitus, is he is technically without his powers. He is completely depowered. He doesn't have his Red Lantern ring. He doesn't have his Red Lantern battery. He is formally the head of the entire Corps. He is completely shut down from all of his former power and status. Like, he still has people running around for him. He's got his gimp suit and whatever's going on. But he is still, like, fighting Jon Stewart and Shaira Transno. Like, he is a formidable power in and of his own right. And this is probably, like, I'm too drunk to say whether we've ever seen him. I'm too drunk. I can't remember another time where we've ever seen him fight someone to a standstill without his actual Red Lantern power.
Yeah, with the full out. And he's doing it, and I think that the play, again, little subtle things. He's fighting thinking that Jon Stewart really screwed, like the Green Lantern screwed him.
He's genuinely doing it from a point of view of, the situation I'm in is your fault.
Yeah, and they're fighting in the idea of, oh no, Atrocitus. We didn't think he'd be here, and they start fighting, but at the end, at first I was wondering, but it seems like as they yell to Atrocitus, something's happening. At first I thought that this thing was, because it looks a little like a seed. I thought it was but no, it looks like Thanagar's falling apart away from that nth metal deal, because you did have the monkey guy
from a core,
you did have the monkey guy, which they never reveal who exactly that is, but they end up saying, he says, I can't quite get around, this thing's too big. So it looks like they.
Yeah, I'm assuming the monkey guy will be important later. Like, it's too obvious to call him out to not make him important.
And there's a couple things. I want to see what the other Lanterns, Red Lanterns, say when they see Razor as a Green Lantern. I want to see a bunch of things.
Yeah, that's going to be a fascinating interaction because,
and it's cool when they're there and he's got the binoculars. He's like, okay, there's Bleez, there's Sarah. I don't know who that monkey guy is. Like, you go down the line, it makes sense.
The implication is that the monkey guy has shown up with them post the collapse of the Red Lanterns?
Or he was just something right near the time that they went. But it's been recent. So, Razor doesn't know who he is. So that's cool. And then Razor gets all whacked out by the Sorrow Lantern Nate, who, again, I think that they've upped Nate a bit, but he's definitely like the least interesting part of the story. Seeing the Red Lantern Corps was awesome. It was really cool. So I really liked it. But what would you give this?
Like an 8.5 bordering on a 9.
I might give it a 9. Me and you talking about it, I started getting, I think Drunk Simon
It does so much that's so much fun, and it leaves the door open to so many interesting possibilities as well. Like,
usually I get upset when they don't explain everything, but I thought they did it in a clever way here.
Like, our final page cliffhanger is like, we've blown apart Thanagar, and we've just got a giant nth metal sphere, and the cliffhanger is, well, what the fuck is inside of it?
Yeah,
And we've
like,
not even
what lies
spoken
within?
about
I'm like,
that. Like,
holy
what the
moly.
fuck is inside
Yeah, I
that
don't
giant
even
egg?
know.
Who
We're going to have to
knows?
see. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're going to get some big,
We've got
Hawkman
Flanagan,
guy.
a planet full of bird people, and we've got a giant egg inside of the planet. What's inside of the fucking egg?
They're going to crab. Well, first off, if it's, in the United States here, that egg is probably $2 billion there. Because a damn regular dozen eggs is like $20. And it's driving me nuts because I used to eat. I'm telling you, I even made a joke. I was going to make a song or a joke about the idea that soon you're going to end up having rap battles between rappers that they're going to be throwing out the big
how
thing.
many eggs they can.
I eat 6 egg omelets. I kept thinking like that's going to be a big thing of like, oh my God, what are you, a Rockefeller? Because I usually eat, if I eat an omelet, I go in big. I go like 4 or 5. They're huge. But you can't do that now. That thing's like 12
when
bucks.
When does an omelet become a frittata?
This thing is huge when I make it. It's probably then. I'm telling you, I go full. But then again, it's usually like 3 eggs and then 2 extra egg whites that I have there. But I don't put anything in it either. It's just the eggs. So it's not.
What do you do with the what do you do with the yolks?
What I do with the other yolk? I throw it away, and my dad, it would drive me nuts as a kid. I used to only eat egg white omelets as a kid, and nobody at that point was saying, "Oh, that's healthy" or whatever. It was my dad. He
weird as shit.
He lost his mind. I just didn't like the taste of yolk. I really didn't. So I'd make these egg white omelets, and I used to like them, but my dad would say, "You're throwing away $6."
The whites are the worst part of the egg, Jim.
I know, but that's why I leave 3. I got 3 yolks. That's enough. I did see somebody
I very rarely agreed with like this weird projection image of your dad that I've had over the years, but on this
now you agree with him?
Yeah,
drunk Simon.
I think your fat dad sat on the sofa yelling at you as you come in
he's so mad.
Yeah,
I did get from him that I don't really like that. Now I don't consider that wasteful because I'm using the whites, but I get what you're saying. But I won't let any food go to waste. If it what? It's expired for 3 weeks. Screw that. I mean, I end up where I think now also I was going to mention at some point the idea where I bet you that the search things of people online searching, how can you tell if eggs are still good, probably skyrocketed with the prices of eggs at this moment in the United States. The idea, because you do put them in water and see if they float.
Yeah, you see if they float. Yeah.
Yep. And so usually eggs will be good for a while. That due date deal and it don't pay attention. But in the meantime, one of the things, because you send me a lot of recipes, I will mention that at one point I did see something and intrigued me. I haven't done it yet, but what you do is you make an omelet, but you do separate the whites. So you make a white omelet, you get that firm, and then put the yolks in there and then fold it. So the inside is then almost like a sunny side up, runny yolk omelet. That sounds pretty good. I want to try it. I know
but it is a lot of work, and to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever eaten an omelette that is like, oh yeah, this is worth like 5 minutes extra work.
There's a lot of extra work with it. I did try it at one point, and I'm like, yeah, I fucked it up. I didn't do well, but it did intrigue me. I was going to try that a couple times, but instead I make curry that you send me and nonsense and all that. So I'll be eating
as long
more.
As the curry doesn't involve any kind of peppers, and then you yell
and then I'm out. I just can't stand them. I just can't stand that shit. By the way, Zach was inspired to have curry because of all the talk of curry. He didn't like it. He wasn't a big fan, though. I think it was more pre-made stuff. Like it did look like it was like in a pouch type thing. Maybe he'd have to tell me, but it looked like he did it that way. It's probably not as good. I did make another round. I made the spicier one.
It's slightly disappointing when people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm really inspired to try a thing that you're talking about," and then they try the worst possible version of what you're talking about.
Take that, Zach. Like, Drunk Simon doesn't cut corners here. He does it the real way.
Exposure to like Philly cheesesteak
is that shit that you had.
Awful shit that I posted to the Slack. Yeah.
See, that's what people should be in the Slack to see the awful shit. I don't even know what that thing was. It looked like not a hot pocket. It looked like a weird bread pocket thing. I don't know.
Do you want to know the worst? Do you want to know the worst thing, Jim? I'm going to have to speak slightly quieter now, so I don't wake up my wife.
Yeah, your wife liked it.
Yeah. No, it's that because I was ill last week. She went away for the weekend, and before she went away, she brought me a bunch of food. And because I left one of them in the fridge, she bought me 2 more because she thought I liked it. in order to eat while she was away. So now I've got 3 of them in the fridge, and I have to find some way of throwing them away.
Well, what you do is what I did as a kid. I actually I don't have much empathy, but I worried. My mom's the worst cook ever because she is British. And so she would make cakes and nobody would eat it. And I actually, there were times where she would just sit at the table and say, Jimmy, why didn't anybody eat my cake? And she would start crying and I would feel bad. So I'd like, no,
so
Mom.
You just sit there and just eat bad cake.
I would eat it, but then I'm not that nice. What I would do is I'd say, oh, I hear somebody at the front, and then I'd cut a piece and throw it over the fence in the backyard. That's how I do it constantly. If she would make something and it would sit out forever, nobody liked any of her cooking, and so I would take like pieces and throw it over the fence that we had, and then she'd be like, "Who ate the cake?" And that's the problem is, though, I encouraged her to make more cake.
And then she'd make more cake, and then you'd have to throw more cake.
At some point, I'd either have to throw it, or sometimes she'd like cut a piece. And
then
give
at
it
some
to me,
point, the neighbor's dog just died, and you were like, I might be partially responsible.
Yeah, probably.
For
She used to make brownies, and I did like her brownies, but they were made so shitty that I can't really eat real brownies. Like real brownies do not taste good to me. I need them hard as a rock and like a hockey puck. That's how I like them, and that's how I always like them. So with that, though, we had some bonus talk with Drunk Simon.
Hey.
This is the best thing is, legitimately, I believe going forward, I will be talking more to Drunk Simon here than Sober Simon like we do on the Patreon for our Hellboy podcast, which I will mention if you are into Hellboy and like, well, I guess if you like Simon, maybe Drunk Simon will show up sometime, but that's pretty early.
Hey, Jim, we don't have to wait until Thursday night to do this on a drunk.
That is true. The problem is, though, is that without the review copies, we usually don't get the books until Wednesday, and sometimes we don't even get them until Thursday morning. So there is a problem of timing. But, and again, you being able to record now as Drunk Simon, it's the perfect time because we're really recording exactly when me and Eric used to do the spotlight. It's exact. So I know it's late for you. And now we're just rambling on. You don't need Drunk Simon. I can talk to Drunk Simon about whatever, forever. But we're gonna bail
I'm just saying,
out now.
Jim, I can be drunk any time of the week.
I thought you meant that you could talk to us.
No, I don't. Who wants to talk to you sober, Jim?
I thought that you lived in London town, not in Belfast. I mean, seriously, you're starting to sound like Luke Hollywood with your drunk.
I can be drunk any time of the week, Jim. Just let me know.
Well, there you go. I'll say ahead of time.
We can ramp this up. Yeah.
I need you even more drunk.
If the problem with the Hellboy listener numbers is that I'm not drunk enough, we can ramp.
That is true. That's true. You don't need a sober, somber, deal. We need more Drunk Simon. But yeah, everybody let us know about Drunk Simon. I'm sure they're going to love it. It'll be funny. You'll just be there in the Slack like, Jesus Christ. Let them mention me. I'm like,
you're going to ruin my liver for
these freaking assholes want me to drink more. Like, and then you have to. You get in that play. That's what happens to a lot of those guys. You're
That's what happened to Eric. Like, that's what nobody understands is that Eric actually quit because his liver couldn't take it.
That is true. I mean, again, everybody loved Drunk Eric. That episode 100. It's
that one episode 5 years ago.
Drunk Eric who broke his lamp.
Years ago? Jesus.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. He fell off his chair, broke his lamp, and passed out. That was great. That was. I do have Drunk Eric. I should end up just mixing in Drunk Eric sound bites all the time. But we're going to go, and what we're going to go off to is a retro review, the weekly retro review that I'm doing with Stork. This week we actually had a poll up that people could vote on. I think we had 4 or 5 issues that they could vote on. And I try to get it towards it's something to do with books that we're talking about. And it just happens that it was a Green Lantern centric deal. We're talking about the volume 2 of Green Lantern, issue number 7, the first appearance of Sinestro. And yeah, me and Stork have some fun with that. It's very Silver Agey. It's very so. I even say, I think at one point that we probably pissed everybody off because people are like, oh my God, it's such a huge issue and whatnot. I understand that. It's still a Silver Age issue.
It's still Silver Age bullshit. Yeah, that's
so much of that Silver Age stuff that you'll hear us talk about. And I think I enjoyed it a little more than Stork. Stork was getting so annoyed with some of the Silver Age stuff that in that the Green Lantern book at that point had 2 stories at least in it. And he messaged me, he's like, I don't have to read that second story, do I? Like, he was already done with the idea. And I even say, the idea that it's Sinestro, and you know that it wasn't a planned thing for him to be so big. His name isn't even in the title of the issue itself. It's actually I think the time when 100,000 people disappear. It's what he does in it. So it's pretty cool. I liked it, but yeah, we'll go to that right about now.
Brightest day and brightest night. No evil escaped my sight. No worthless evil mites. Beware of my power, Green's light.
Green's light. Green's light it is.
Well done.
Oh my goodness. Wrong turn. That's a retro soundbite for a retro book because it's time for the retro section of the podcast. I'm, of course, here with Stork. What up, Stork?
What up, Jim?
What is up is we had a poll for the retro book. I put it up really quick. It's one of those that we don't have a lot. Yeah, that's what he said. We don't have a lot of time to get the poll going because we finished the podcast Sunday night and then we record on Tuesday. But I did put it up and we got a bunch of votes. Yeah. And there was stuff, and I tried to get stuff that could have some sort of connection with this week's books. We had things with Superman. We got some vampires. We had a bunch of things, but we also ended up having Green Lantern Volume 2, number 7. And that is the first appearance of Sinestro because of the Green Lantern Corps book that is out this week. And it won, too much to our chagrin at one point, because it is a bit of a Silver Age slog, a bit. It is a good issue overall in the idea that it does present Sinestro. So people will probably put it on a pedestal a bit, but it's a little long-winded, but we'll get through it. There's some fun things with it. You get Quard, something that Eric couldn't stand. You get that whole antimatter universe, and you get a bunch of rules with the Green Lantern thinking that this is just the 7th issue of this Hal Jordan run. And they're kind of just throwing things at you. They're throwing things at you with the ring and the powers and some of the, things that it can and can't do. Also, at this issue number 7, you realize that Hal has done a hell of a lot of stuff leading up to this, because there's so many, remember when I fought the Guardians twice? I'm like, this is only the 7th issue. And then the idea of the Guardians saying, remember when we just, yeah. So you have that going on. And I think that one of the plays of this issue that plays out well is you do need a bigger villain. You need not a group of people in an antimatter universe to be
a bunch of Charles
the villain.
Xaviers.
You need somebody else. Yeah, exactly. So what you get is Sinestro. So that does work out. And you realize, too, that nowadays, if this was something like this, it would be called, the issue itself would be called, The Rise of Sinestro. Or it's just called The Day 100,000 People Vanished is the name of the story. And we'll get into that right now. It's written by John Broome, pencils by Gil Kane, inks by Joe Giella, and letters by Gaspar Saladino, edited by Julia Schwartz. So it's classic deal. Obviously, it came out or at least the cover date of August 1961. So way back when Stork was only 3 years old is what that was. I hear. He's an old man. Now, in this, we're going to get Tom Kalamaku, who went by Pieface. And we will mention that. I just did. It's the Sign of the Times deal. How, if it's one of those things, all I could think of is people getting in trouble for past tweets or interviews. I'm like, somebody's just going to try to cancel a fictional character of Hal Jordan because he lays it on heavy.
Yes.
At one point, Tom should just say, you could say that once when you show up, but please, my name's Tom. I just think Hal says it because he can't remember Tom's name, one of his best friends, where he does that. Also, that would be the argument. Well, they're real good friends, and Tom doesn't mind. Well, Tom also doesn't mind yelling jumping fish hooks, which I don't know what the hell that is. But you end up where Hal is zipping through the city, and you end up with one of the crazy, beginnings with the narration. The incredible occurrence in Valedale, an ordinary busy community on the West Coast, led Green Lantern, stalwart champion of justice, on a long, long trail that finally brought him face to face with a fantastic foe, the amazing Sinestro, a renegade Green Lantern who had joined forces with the evil weaponers of Quard. And then it says the day 100,000 people vanish. I actually do get a kick out of these beginning pages where you have something that sets up the story. It actually reminds me a lot of manga. If you read manga, you end up having the first 2 color pages when you start a series. Half the time it means nothing, or it's so obscure and ambiguous that you're like, later, you're like, oh, I kind of get it. But this is always kind of funny where you end up where Hal zips in to this town, big town too. I mean, geez, 100,000 people, more than in Quakertown. But he goes in here and it's like, everybody's gone. There's nobody there. Everybody's vanished. And then you just have Sinestro in this bubble. Green Lantern, you're next. And he's all pissed off. So we then find out what did happen. One of these things that we usually would complain about is the idea that if everybody disappears, you would end up having a lot of mass destruction, cars running in.
Not just
but they
gas
try to make
leaking out of the side of a car.
I'll give you the one thing, though. They try to make it, at least in this one section of town, that it's like gridlock, so nobody's moving, but the car's still running. And then, you let it up, they're going to move, but it's fine. Everybody's just there. And it reminds me of a better day when they're walking around and saying, oh, lovely day, isn't it, Mrs. Wilson? And then Mrs. Wilson probably is like thinking, you screwed my husband, something like that. I need to start some troubles in my mind. And then you just have, fill her up, Joe, get a move on it. Everybody's yelling at each other, but not this lady with the lovely.
They are packed in. It's like they're waiting for a parade or something.
Yeah,
it's
what's
crazy.
happening on the other side there? What are they waiting for? Tickets there? I guess, what would it be in 61? Beatles aren't around yet, so I don't know what they're doing. It's too early. So maybe they're waiting for Engelbert Humperdinck. Yeah, Elvis was a little like his deal, kind of like
Hollywood.
A little. There was a weird play in that early 60s where it became a lot of odd fuddy-duddy music is what I'd call it. But then the Beatles came and kicked it in.
Bang.
Yeah, even less than that. It was like standards and singing nuns and things like that were the craze. So you end up where they're gone. They are gone. The town has become
Vanished.
A ghost town. So Hal ends up flying to meet Tom. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. A lot of times in the Silver Age especially, you have nobody can do anything without it being explained 3 separate ways. But I'll give this credit where Hal comes back to Tom. And Tom says, Green Lantern, did you find out what happened at Valedale? So we didn't actually really see, except that first page, that Hal was there. So I'm like, okay, you're speeding it up. This is pretty good.
Yeah.
Then it kind of doesn't speed up, but he sits there and starts talking and says, I examined the whole town with my power rig by face. There's not a single clue. And says the people are gone as they vanished into thin air.
Jumping
and
fish hooks.
Jumping fish hooks. Also, Tom is about 3'5", and so you end up having him go
with
a
kid. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Tom.
He's a standard deal. And,
okay. Yeah, he does. He's a little on the short side.
He's short. If he had a New York Yankees cap, he'd be short round.
Yes.
And so you end up Hal's and Hal with a luscious set of hair there, unlike a book that we read for our Patreon. But says, while on my way back from Valedale, I was thinking the incredible disappearance took place a little after 9 o'clock. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You get Tom's okay, what does that mean? And he's like, well, Pieface, it just happens that I was supposed to be in Valedale at that hour, at that hour to take part in the ceremony opening of a new boys' settlement house there. All right, he's doing things, right? He's got a lot of things on his plate, like the boys' settlement house where he's going to cut the ribbon. I couldn't make it because I had to finish a case I was working on. A case, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
What's
case.
her name?
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. He's like, pipe down, Piefish. So but he keeps saying it. It's so great. And great aura. He ends up being a lot of catchphrases here with Tom and says, you would have disappeared too. Oh my God. And he's like, yeah, exactly. Oh my God. I got a headache. And he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he ends up where he ends up having a headache. And what ends up happening is his astral projection, his energy projection, which is Hal. And in that, at the beginning, when Hal became a Green Lantern, this was the way that you had the exposition of who the Guardians were.
Okay.
Hal didn't himself leave because I guess they thought that was too fantastic an idea that he would go through space. So his energy projection went and was told who the Guardians were, what all this means. But
they mind
for no
them.
reason at all, they would not let Hal remember this. The energy projection back there, it was for us, is basically what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But when they go there, Hal's energy projection zips off. That's why Hal kind of has that second where he's like, oh my God, my head hurts. And the Guardians want to give him the update that they think Sinestro's pretty bad. I like, too, the Guardians.
We've made one mistake ever.
I'm telling that's the best. And in that, sometimes when you get these, sometimes when you get these issues, you realize like some of the stuff was right on, because from this moment on, from the moment one, the Guardians are always sus. They always mess up. They always keep things from people. So when they say, "Ooh, we've only made one mistake ever," like you said, get used to it. And it's Sinestro. They ended up getting Sinestro. And what they pretty much say here is, listen, we're just little blue dudes. We don't have a lot of time. We can't check on every sector all the time. So usually the ring will choose somebody good, and we can allow that, and we let that sit back. They also mention in this where Sinestro gets the ring, we're not yet at the point of he was the greatest Green Lantern ever, anything like that. He was just a Green Lantern from Korgar. And they kind of check in now and again. It's like an NFL drug test.
Yes.
Where they're going to say random drug. They're going to randomly check in. Unfortunately, when Sinestro gets this ring, he has problems because he is power hungry and he wants things his way. And they mention it in a way that
he wants a sweet
so
pad.
Weird. Yeah, he wants a sweet pad with a sweet chair. And he's going to just start, doing... ruling Korgar. But in that, the Guardians explain it, says, although Sinestro did not realize it, he was already infected with the virus of power, to which by a psychological quirk in his brain, he did not have enough resistance. I guess they're trying to play the idea that willpower, all we have to say is, I think that the problem here is...
It went to his head, just say that, his big red head. At times.
I think they're running into problems where they don't want kids to think that the rings can mess up by choosing people. So they almost make it like he has this little quirk that it wasn't around. No, he ended up getting power and he wanted more. That's the whole thing. And I was going to mention, this issue itself, this story, it felt like it took me like 3 Diordans to read.
The Jordans, Jesus! They speak English every other word. Why do we have to have a word for hour and day?
They want to make words for hours and days. So Sinestro, when he gets the ring, he's like, I better power this up. It only powers me for 37 Diors. I'm like, what, Christian Diors? What's going on here? And then it says, editor's note, the equivalent of 24 Earth hours. Then they go and say Diordans, and they have to have another editor's note that's days. Because these guys, once Sinestro takes power, he's sitting there and he's like, all right, everybody. He's like a mob boss now. You can all come and ask me a favor, but he gets bored. He thinks that these things, he is like most other things. This happened with Thor recently. When you make somebody a king, you want to show them doing their kingly duties. It's like a job. This is why I don't like jobs in comics, because they're usually boring unless they're exactly benefiting, like a reporter. With Clark Kent, you can play that to get things going, and it explains how he
knows where to go. And
a king, though, has to sit and rule, and usually that stuff is not the funnest things to see. It's disputes, and you have to do this, especially
my
when
neighbor's tree is growing over my fence, and I don't like it. Like, seriously, I'm Sinestro. I have to deal with this.
I have to get a hold of our what's it called? I was going to say the county seat, our city council or town council. And out front of our house, we have a freaking sinkhole. The street is caving in. It's the worst, and nobody's fixing it. So I got to get a hold of them. But that's not a fun comic, right? It's not even a fun podcast. So I better stop. But in that, he's there, and he's like, you're bullcrap. He just ends up where he doesn't care. He doesn't want to deal with the idea of, hey, this guy, he yelled at me. Yeah, exactly. So, and the people, I love the narration because it's through the crowd. We have to wait to see Sinestro sometimes for Diordans. And then he takes only those cases that interest him, helps only a few of us, and then ignores the rest. And you have this guy, evil raiders threatening your settlement, robbing you. I'm like, that sounds pretty bad. I think that would be something that Sinestro would probably do something about because of the idea that he likes order and things like that. But he's like,
plus it's a bit of action.
Bored. Yeah. He's like, how I am bored with these Jordan long complaints. And please, my system.
And keep in mind all this Dior shit when we get to the clock.
Yeah, because that doesn't make sense in how would know it. No. And, well, when do we get to the explanation that they're clunk? So you end up where this psychological quirk has made Sinestro an evil tyrant, and he does end up where a guy steps up and he's like, you're no champion. And this guy's even worse up. This guy has no hair. Like, I mean, the man with the full head of hair rules Korrigar, I think. Who is that? In the land of the blind, the land of the bald. You end up with this guy's like, you're a bunch of bullcrap. You're power mad, Sinestro. You're the worst.
And all he does is knock him out. It's not like he kills the guy and everybody falls in line right away. Oh, he's a dictator.
Yeah, you can't yell at the king like that. And he's like, silence! And says, all of you, I'm a Green Lantern. You don't tell me what to do. And then you get the continuing. And also, with all this, it is the play that it's weird that they saw all this and then decided to react later. I mean, this is already pretty much sure. And then later we'll even get videos from the antimatter universe that don't really make sense. But you end up where pride and love of power were Sinestro's undoing. And they strip away his deal. They end up, we were mistaken. You are not a good Lantern. And far from the greatest Lantern of all time at this point. I mean, this is very quick. Later it'll be expanded. But they end up ripping the Green Lantern power, which includes, give me that patch insignia, your stupid mask, and the lantern. And I will point out, too, I was going to say at the beginning, at this point, the lantern is the thing they really center on. They barely talk about the ring at all. It's more the lantern. You've been given the lantern. The ring is just an extension of that to use the power. But they end up saying you're nothing. You're done. You're no longer a Green Lantern. Then we're going to do something here where instead of putting you in prison, we're going to send you to the universe that hates our guts. And is just full of bad people that you might get along with. Why are they doing this? They're basically sending them to where is the worst possible spot. Put him in a prison. He's no longer powered. He's no longer anything.
Keep an eye on him.
I know the science cells, that'll come later, but put him in a jail. That's all you have to do. Put him on a jail on Oa, but they send him to court. And that's where he starts getting along with everybody. And they're so surprised. Like we sent him there to a universe.
Guy who's totally evil, and he's getting along with all the other evil people in this area. I thought they would fight, but he's becoming their ruler. And boy, do they see evil a lot. I'm glad I didn't do a drinking game.
Oh yeah, they do. They end up at one point like, where our universe is based on good. There's versus evil. Oh my God, evil. And he gets there, and basically Sinestro shows up, and he's like, where am I? Okay, I'm with the evil weaponers of Cord. Pretty cool. Let me go and talk to them. And we know Sinestro, he's got the silver tongue here. He can convince them, but he's not lying. He basically says, let's do shit. Let's go and attack Hal Jordan, your enemy, and my enemy, the Guardians. They're all for it. They end up within what appears to be one Diorden. They end up making him their ruler. I mean, They end up like, hey, we want you to rule us. He's like, fine, that's pretty cool. But yeah, they end up where they want to get...
It's got a snazzy new outfit and everything.
Oh, yeah, right away. I mean, look at that thing. Though you would guess that when he shows up that some of the Cordians would have an outfit quite like his, but they don't. I don't know where he decided he wanted to look like Icicle is who he looks like in my mind. So also very skinny, skinny, long neck. But he says, I want to get back at the Green Lantern. I can't do anything here. We're in the antimatter universe. But lo and behold, I made some crazy contraption within an afternoon where it will teleport Hal here.
Just a few
and
Diors.
We can end up, seriously. And it's evil. And we'll end up, and it's the super radar is what he calls it, where he can't see. You can't see into the regular universe, but he can follow the Green Lantern signature, it seems. And then he ends up where he knows he's going to Valedale and he's not going to power up the ring, which is weird.
His
later
ring won't be operating. How's he know that?
That's what I'm saying. I thought that what he meant was that when he's going there, he knew somehow he read a newspaper article before he got banished. So even though he's on Korrigar, the idea that Hal was going to get to this Valedale as Hal Jordan, ace pilot, not Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and that would make sense that he'd take the ring off. He still has the ring on. He's just not at that exact moment making a construct, it seems, even when he does end up using it. The problem is that Sinestro not being able to see, really, just being able to, somehow he knows the future, though. And he ends up where that's why he gets and zaps Valedale. Everybody in Valedale goes to Cord, but Hal wasn't there. So he messed up. But these guys don't mind. They end up, they're bald too. Everybody's bald. And Sinestro's losing his hair, but he still has the hair. But in the meantime, all this has been the Guardians telling Hal what led up to this point. Like, that's it, because Hal's still there in the alleyway or at the docks with Tom. Sexy. So he ends up where he says, we're going to send, the Guardians say, it says, we're going to send you back now. We need you to figure out a way to stop this. Sinestro's out of control. We're going to send you back. But this time, we're going to let you remember what this was, which then I think would let him remember what because they explained the idea that Hal's just going to pop in and like, what the hell happened? Like the first time his projection went, they explained to him like, hey, this is what's going on, whatever. They barely accept. So what does he think? Like, man, I'm screwed up. Maybe he thinks he's on LSD. Maybe he thinks Pieface slipped him something. But he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I can't tell Pieface anything about the Guardians. That's one secret I can't share. He says to himself, you're a guy who goes around and flies with constructs. What is the idea of like, oh, these guys, the Guardians, what is Tom going to do? Yeah. So weird. Later, Tom gets involved in the new Guardians down the line. But you end up where Hal just zips off. He barely says, he's like, yeah, I'm fine, and zips off. Jumping fish hooks. He just mumbled a few words, and then he took off like a streak, and there he goes. He's off to try to find his way into Quard and save the people of Valedale. And that's the other thing.
This is weird.
It's barely referenced the idea that he is that worried about the people from Valedale. That like kind of gets pushed in there, but he goes to Coast City, like he likes to do, and he turns everybody invisible because he thinks that if he turns everybody invisible, then I thought it was basically then Sinestro would not attack them to get back at it. He wouldn't know. But what it is that Hal's going to stand in the middle of Coast City.
No, I'm the only one who'll see. It's their crazy plan.
If Sinestro uses this radar deal, right? It doesn't matter if you're invisible. It's going to grab you. It's just that Sinestro can't see so that he thinks Hal's alone. But he really doesn't see that way anyway. And the idea that all these people would probably get zipped off with Hal. They're all invisible walking around. One lady looks like she's go-go dancing. She's doing a little hula dance. And also with this, I believe the idea that I would ask you is, if you're invisible, can you see other people that are invisible? Are you in an invisible realm? Because this guy's about to run over like 7
yeah, that's
people,
what he said.
Right?
He says, I can't see anybody. I better stop driving. Yeah, it's a good call.
And it looks like he's just like right, but I don't think there's enough time. Everybody also, if you're invisible, does that mean you walk around like you're blind? Because one guy is like trying to, it's a weird play of invisibility, right? The idea you might, I don't know, you're still walking around. This one guy's like, his hands are going all over the place. The guy slams on. Yeah, yes.
Oops, sorry, man.
One lady. And everybody's walking around like they're suddenly blind. Now, in that, once Hal gets zipped away, he says, oh, I ended up, making it so it was only temporary. What do these people think after this? Like, where do you go
they
from here?
They look like it was a lark. They're just, boy, that was fun.
Man, where's Ashton Kutcher? I think we've been punked.
Yeah. We almost got hit by a car.
Yeah, oh my God, look at that asshole driving like a maniac with his hat. Get out of town. I like everybody's got that. All the guys have hats on. But yeah, so that was a civilized time here. But yeah, they're no longer invisible. But it doesn't make sense because of Hal's, they would still get zipped. It's a weird play, but it's like, hey, Sinestro, I'm here, take me. And then it says, what seems like, Diordans, it ends up taking him, and he finally does it. It says what seems like an interminable wait. He's like, oh, thank God, he zipped me away. And so there's Hal Jordan. He did go to a spot that he had been using to go to the antimatter universe, but that's blocked off. You want to make it so Sinestro's the one.
We had to have him make everybody disappear for the title of the book, I guess.
Even that, I think that was more of the people who just vanished. These are just invisible.
Valedale or whatever.
Yeah. So what we now have, and we're more than halfway through, but what we start having, it's now what I like to call the war of the balls is what happens. I mean, everything in the antimatter universe is solved by balls. It's the deal. Because Hal ends up in the antimatter deal. You have the Quardians, you have Sinestro there, and he's in a ball. He's being contained in a ball. And you start with the stuff with, hey, the yellow impurity that's mentioned and the idea that you can't get out of this ball because it's yellow. You can't fight it. You're stuck.
That is the yellow Energo sack, Jim. If I was making a drink for this, I would be making the yellow Energo sack.
The yellow Energo sack, which is explained as a yellow bubble of pulsating energy. I like that because that's what you end up Hal yelling. You've encased me in a yellow bubble of pulsating energy, Sinestro. But is this the way you propose to destroy me? And then Sinestro says, patience, my ex-colleague, patience. He says, and by the way, I was a Green Lantern, which we know. And he says, as a former ring wielder, I know all your weaknesses. I know what can end up doing. I made the yellow Energo sack. We don't really know how, but you end up in the Quardian, whatever happens in the Quardian universe stays in there. You just do whatever you want. Editor's note, due to a necessary impurity in its composition, GL's ring has no power over anything yellow, a fact well known to Sinestro, the renegade Green Lantern. I was going to make a joke about Tom. I will not. I will not there. I'm not going to get that bad. So you end up where the big play is, instead of just putting him in something and suffocating his ass right now, because he says the ring will save him, but you could do more. They're just going to have him hang in a yellow bubble until the clock strikes 6, I think they say, because that's when his power will run out. Now, they are in the Quardian universe now, not in his, but how does time work there? It's weird. There's just a clock. Boom. But Sinestro would know his time, which is 37-hour days. It's all wacky. So, or Jordan's. So Hal's like, oh, damn you. I got to get out of here. I can't get out. Oh, my God. And he's looking at the clock, fancy like 70s looking clock in my mind. My mom had a clock like that. It was ridiculous.
It's weird that it's not marked this 37 hours, but
yeah,
or
really,
Dior's.
because he is kind of making it. But they're like, oh my God, look, his power's running out. The clock strikes 6. In the meantime, you end up having Hal say, I can sense the clock. I can see it works on vibrations of atomic particles. My ring has been receiving its impulses. I wonder. What we're going to play here is that classic Silver Age deal where when the bubble goes down, or as they like to call it, the yellow Energo sack.
Yes.
Hal just blasts Sinestro. He blasts him. And Sinestro's like, oh my God, how is it still working? And then you get, well, you want to tell me, I'll tell you how. He says that when he was breathing in the bubble, he realized that his carbon dioxide must be leaving the bubble. So what he ended up doing was charging up the carbon dioxide molecules seemingly while they were outside. It doesn't make sense. He's stuck in this bubble. It doesn't make sense.
He uses his ring to force them out and advance the clock because it runs on atoms or something. It runs on science.
It sped up the atomic mechanism and he made it run fast. So when 6 o'clock came on the clock, it was actually, 5:30.
Couldn't they just say he moved the minute hand ahead a little bit?
I wanted to. Here's the thing. I thought they were going to do that, but it does look like those Quardian idiots have nothing else to do but stare at that clock, and they might have seen it.
It must have moved ahead on it. It still would have been noticeable,
just ran
right?
fast. I mean, all of a sudden, it's like going around. They don't care. The idea, though, is he can't move the hand because he can't get anything outside the bubble.
Except
but what
for his
he does
breath.
is force his breath. But if he didn't, he'd die. Carbon monoxide. I mean, this is the thing. The carbon dioxide, it's got to get out of there anyway. But the air, it's all wacky.
It was very nice of Sinestro to allow the CO2 to pass out of the bubble instead of letting him suffocate.
The Energo sack. So he ends up where he says, I have power. And then makes one of the. I've never seen Hal make a tidal wave of green, but he does to get rid of the Quardians.
Like that.
That's kind of funny. Yeah, that was pretty funny. And he's like, I have to hurry. I still don't have a lot of time. I mean, I made it run fast, but not that fast. So he ends up where all that goes, and Hal gets rid of the Quardians. They go on a. It looks like just raw
surfing safari.
Is what it looks like. Yeah, surfing safari indeed. And then Sinestro is trapped. He's like, okay, I'm going to go and take care of Sinestro. And what he ends up doing, because they go back and forth with each other and, hey, the Guardians, they're bull crap and all that. And then you end up where Hal puts him in a bubble now and says, once again, the great green beam flares out with invincible force. And instance later, And he says, no force on cord can penetrate the ring-made bubble I have cast around you. It's just bubbles over it.
It's
and any
the
evil you
green
create
energo sac.
Yeah. And he says, any, evil you're going to... What he's doing is he wants to skedaddle and he needs to get some time. He needs to have Sinestro captured so he doesn't stop him, because he just ends up saying, I bid you farewell. I'm leaving. Even that, like Sinestro says, you
A final farewell.
The big play here is that Sinestro, knowing that the Green Lantern, rules, he says, listen, I know you're not allowed to hurt anybody. The ring won't let you hurt me. And this is the best. The Guardian should have said something, and it almost feels like it's like the letter of the law or whatever, but it's the Guardians banish me here, so you can't take me back to punish me. And Hal basically goes, Drats, you're right. I mean, the idea that you're going to stop Sinestro, you can't kill... The Guardians send him to do this. They know he can't kill him. You would think he's got to come back so that they can put him somewhere else where he doesn't cause problems. But he says you can't do that because you can't countermand the Guardians' rules. And I like where Hal just goes, that is true.
Yeah, you got me there. I can't put you in a green bubble for eternity. Oxygen's his enemy.
When you end up where Sinestro says that and you get that's true, I swear to God, that might be one of the Guardians that's laying there after the surface board, because it does look like somebody who's hurt. Like, that's true. Yeah. He's like, damn you. You're wrong about being, helpless, Sinestro. I'll show you how wrong. Puts him in a bubble that'll disappear the minute he leaves the antimatter universe. I mean, all this ends up doing really does is say, they're going to come back at us full force. Now the Guardians are real pissed. And
the way he presents it, though, is that he's stuck in there forever, but it's not the case. So, yeah.
No. Even the idea that the ring is going to lose the charge, and he's just going to leave, and it's just going to go. And in that, I do like where he porcupines him to the wall, though. That was pretty funny. He gets them all, and of course, he gets it all on the fabric of his outfit there. And Sinestro just laughs, but Hal leaves. He ends up going back through the hole that was there before, but he couldn't get from the other side, but it's still open on that side. So he goes through. I'm actually surprised that at this point it doesn't just say, and then it blew up and I can't go back, because it just seems weird that that's right where Sinestro can go if he wants. It's there. Blow it up. But he goes through. I like that spread eagle flying too, where he looks like he's like parachuting down. Look at that thing. He goes, he runs off to the Ferris Aircraft Company in the, what does it say? The cubicle where he ends up doing the deal. We have this. I'm reading it right now along
brightest
with
day and brightest night.
Yep, he's got it.
No evil escape my sight.
Escape.
No Warthrods, evil mights. Beware of my power, green's light.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Maybe the idea that Wrong Turn, he's aware of a villain, the Warfords, that will show up later, because the Warfords is let those who worship the Warfords. And then instead of evil's might, it's evil might.
Evil mights?
Evil might.
Those little things.
No, those are the fifth dimensional imps. He knows what's down. Just watch out for those Warfords and monkeys. Don't get near them with that. Now, to explain to people, because it's been so long since, Wrong Turn and stuff like that. It was a guy me and Eric work with. I actually read it to him and told him, and this was like, okay, repeat after me. In brightest day. That's all. Like, that was how quick the thing, and he never would get it. And that was like take 10. Ooh-wee. But yeah, he ends up using the oath and gets the power, and then zips off Spread Eagle up to talk about the boys at the boys' home and the Emerald Gladiator. There's a lot of Emerald this and that throughout. I always think of the Emerald Archer anytime I see a Green Arrow, but it was very big, and says, and remember this, boys? When really, like, Spread Eagle, like, he's got his hands behind his back. He's really pushing the deal. And remember this, boys? When right is on your side, you will always overcome evil, no matter. See, Matt, that's like, is that a pun? No matter where you find it. And by the way, don't be racist, he says at the last second. Do as I say, not as I do. And then zips off. And I'm telling you, the boys in the crowd are like, the hell is this? Like,
they're going to see Superman.
What's going on? Superman was here and they promised us pizza. What's happening? And then it says the end. And then in what we're reading it is, you get a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah.
Tootsie Roll Pop.
And this was only 16 pages. Poof.
I'll give them one thing. you do pack a lot in. Like if you did buy this, you get a lot, but just imagine like this is the stuff that kids were loving and reading and it continued on. I'll reference Eric Shea one more time. He said that he hates Silver Age because if Silver Age continued, nobody would be reading comics. He says about the Golden Age too, because I'll say, well, you have to have that to get Terry. He's like, bull crap. Like if people still did that, then we'd be done. There'd be nothing.
Well,
so
what about Metamorpho? Explain that to me then.
Well, there you go. Yeah. It's there's the thing of being fun and then going too far.
Some weirdos like it.
Yeah.
Jason. Ruben.
So with all that, there is another story called Wings of Destiny. You do get Tom some more in that. And it's more of an idea of Tom and his love life and things like that. That's kind of funny. It's very quick. This is the main story. Sets up Sinestro, but in a way that he's there, kind of gets taken care of. If it's popular, we can continue with it. Obviously, it was. So we try to have fun with these. I did say to Dr. Matt, hey, we're doing this first appearance of Sinestro. And he said, oh, you're going that far back. And I'm, well, it is the retro deal, but maybe at a point. But we'll see. Like, if we're going to do a lot of Silver Age stuff, and I'm sure things will pop up, I really like the Jimmy Olsen stuff, the Lois Lane stuff. Now, that's fun. When we end up being able to do that stuff, it is hilarious. And Jimmy is really should have been canceled like 17 million times. The things that he does in that Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen are really crazy. But he turns into a Wolfman. If we did that last week, it would have been awesome. He was a Wolfman. It was hilarious. But with that, what would you give this?
I'm going to go 7.4 on the Silver Age scale. And it's goofy, the Silver Age story, but I think the cool thing is that you get a lot of the Green Lantern lore in this issue that moves forward.
Oh, it packs it in. And what you're talking about is the yellow Energo sack, is what you mean, right? Face. Or, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's so bad. Somebody says it like 7 times in one page. Like, we say it, but when it's in the issue, it's going on and on. Holy moly.
The saving grace is he's not drawn overly racist as like a World War II comic or something.
Detective Comics one issue, like the one back in the day before Batman, where you ended up having really bad. And in fact, that was the one that Gene Luen Yang ended up like kind of putting out and putting in that new Superman to try to revert that and stuff like that. But this is, at that point, that was Yellow Scare stuff. And you had a lot of people writing some really awful things. I remember Slam Bradley, not exactly the greatest of guys. One of the, I love those stories because they just end up being, and that's, basically the main hit before you ended up having the Batman. So you end up in Detective Comics. And I remember the first time that they had, and I think it was that cover with the, the emperor of this crazy, mystical, everything's mystical. And legitimately, anytime they would go anywhere where there were Asians, they were all hopped up on opium. Everybody was falling asleep. Everybody was an opium den. It was really bad. Shorty pointed it out way too many times. And if you don't know what I mean, Shorty was Slam Bradley's deal. Maybe at some point we will do. I reviewed all the Slam Bradley before Batman. Maybe we'll have to dip into that for the retro deal just to show people how bad it is. But again, we're in a bubble of retro. We're allowed to do whatever. It's what it is. We're explaining it. So I think that maybe people would be beyond that. But the idea that poor Tom is way more than just Pie Face. And he ends up later being even bigger. I said in that Millennium event, the New Guardians, pretty cool. So
yeah, that was one of the options.
It was one of the choices. Right? We would have had Tom, and we would have had Hemo Goblin, the HIV-infested vampire. It's a wacky story. And then that goes to like the next issue is Snowflame. That series is wacky. We're going to do that at some point. I don't even care if it ties in. I'll pretend that somebody does coke just to get us into that issue, because that is
you got a song for it too,
and I have a song for it too, so that'll work out. Though it would get us flagged, but I'd still like to play it. But yeah, so that's that for the retro deal. Thanks for joining me once again, Stork, and I will have a link in the show notes to have you go to Stork's Patreon and his podcast, which is very, very good. He does a lot of stuff with his lovely wife, is what he does, and they do a lot of Star Trek stuff if you're somehow into that. If you're not an adult, I mean, some people like that stuff, I guess. So
Not cobbled together. It was actually her.
Yes, you have that, and also some manga stuff and comic stuff in general. So we will link that, and even stuff that I don't ever delve into, TV and movies, crazy stuff. Yeah, I don't even know what those things are.
I've seen the Batman the whole way through.
Yeah, you have. You've probably saw Endgame all the way through too. Holy moly, you are a guy with a lot of free time. That's what it is. But I'll put that in the show notes. So thanks, Stork, for joining me, and we'll get back to the rest of the podcast.
Nothing makes much sense. You're doing things you think are wrong, but there's no way to confess. Is the one who never lies. The wounded man is the one who cannot die. There's nothing you can do. You know it doesn't matter. And when he comes for you, all this will lead into this dark pattern. This dark pattern.
And we are back, and I am here with my man Tom. What up, Tom?
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
We got to change that song. That's
yeah, we do. I do like that song,
man.
though.
Wound Man. I couldn't put that in a lyric. I can't just say just Wound Man. It has to be Wounded Man, but that means we're obviously going to be talking about Dark Patterns, starting a new arc. This deal, another 3-issue arc, but that'll be the second book that me and you are talking about, because with Eric going away, things have expanded. And me and you are also going to talk about Batman and Robin, one of my favorite, if not my favorite books with the All In. I really do like it, and I continue to like it.
I would put it in a top 5, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's one of the better books, and I just read it this morning. Me and you were actually recording on Saturday, and sometimes I'll read ahead, but I have to reread it anyway because I have a mushy brain. So I end up, and sometimes, that'll work out better. I should do that. But
sure.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, all week I was told, oh, man, it's a disappointment. It's not good. Oh, geez, this and that. And I thought, oh, that stinks. And I was thinking, with the way that people were saying, because they didn't want to spoil it, while I don't care about spoilers, I thought, oh, well, we definitely have to find out who Memento is. When they're talking about being upset about it, that was the only thing I could think that would be upsetting. Oh, it was this. Oh, my God, it was just, surface level, whatever. In the meantime, we don't get that. We get an issue that's centered a lot on, again, Batman. I'd say worrying. I could put it in air quotes. The idea, almost jealous of the idea of this Bashar and Damien spending time at the hospital, even though, again, before we even get into the credits, I will remind people that Batman was the one who started this whole process by giving him the book of Thomas Wayne and saying, read his journal.
I don't know. I feel like this book would work better because it just kind of feels like there's manufactured tension between Batman and Damien. And that just feels kind of funny coming out. I did not like Joshua Williamson's Batman and Robin, but coming out of that, this just kind of feels weird. So like, I feel like this storyline could work, but only in a setup of Damian maybe having gone off and done some wild shit or something. But I don't know. It just doesn't quite work with what we have as the established like Bruce Damian relationship.
Yeah. The thing that I get here, and we continue to have, he's still infected. He's still infected.
That
by
is true. That is true. He is still having issues.
He has the Gravedigger's Poppy deal going, and he has these issues. But in my mind, it almost plays out. Well, it's not, but it's lasting a long enough time to make me feel like, it kind of just feels like a Zor-Nar almost situation. Just the idea of him being angry at points. And is it really him or is it that? But these things, I don't think I think that he's worried. I think that the play here, and maybe this issue starts to give you a little more of that, but I hope that by the end, especially by the end when it's just Bruce, you don't have a lot of times where Bruce will go to Damian as Bruce. And I think that that's where you're missing a little piece of it, because it does feel just like Batman's being a jerk. That Batman doesn't care. When he does this stuff with Bruce, it opens it up a bit, because I think Bruce is worried. It's not the idea in my mind, like the way that it's played out and the way that Philip Kennedy Johnson makes it kind of forced in, is the idea that Batman is jealous of Bashar, so he's trying desperately to find something wrong with him. But then with the League of Assassins, doesn't feel to me as if I'm worried they'll hurt Damian. It feels to me as like, oh man, Damian's gonna go with him because he doesn't like me. And he's like, even if this Bashar at one point says, by the way, I'm here for your other grandpa, Raish. And remember, Bashar has a big connection with Thomas as well. But hey, why don't you come back to the League of Assassins? I don't think Damian would go.
I don't think so.
It's like Batman almost, and this happens a lot in any sort of relationship, the idea that Batman just does not have enough faith in Damian to not just to fight things. Like, that's fine, even though he says not to engage with Memento here. But the idea that he thinks that all it will take is somebody from the League of Assassins to show up and just say, hey, Damian, why don't you come with us? Oh, man, I've been waiting. And off he goes. So it's kind of that play that is a shame. Now, I want Batman at one point to say to Damian, because if you remember when he gave him the journal, I want Batman, Damian, I just wanted you to look at, your grandpa like to draw. Remember, that was the big thing.
I just wanted you to get better and stop drawing shitty anime.
Yeah, I wanted you to do, I don't like the manga anime stuff. I like the classic stuff, like my dad. And I just wanted to show you that. Like, you didn't have to read the words. Yeah. I mean, seriously. But again, it is the play where I also think maybe we have to go, because Damian reads the journal. And it's all about, I'm going to go to there's not much that he says. I wanted him to see things learn more about Bruce, especially because Bruce is so guarded with things, and then realize, this stuff that was really cool that Bruce was doing with Thomas, it got cut off. Boom, it ends. I mean, that journal, when Damian, there's a big moment, I think, where Damian, if you show him and he gets to the point where it's in the journal, Dear Diary, we're going to see Zorro again. I love that movie, and me and Bruce have a connection. Nothing can be more perfect, right?
I told Martha she had to wear that pearl necklace.
Exactly, that pearl necklace. She didn't want to. She didn't even want to go. But I said, nope, we're going because our bratty kid insists. But again, it might be the idea, too, little Brucey, you could find out through, and there's been different ways of showing it, but the idea of Bruce looking back at it, he's made this big thing, and the idea, he's like, Bruce doesn't want to go. He wants to go play kickball with his friend. It could be kind of interesting, but you're not really dealing much with Damian, what he's actually reading about Bruce and things like that. You just kind of get the idea, I want to help people at the hospital. So I think maybe you could but again, there's space for things and there's not.
Which, we were talking a little bit before the podcast, I do think it would be interesting to see Damian continue at the hospital and get some characters of, that are uniquely his own, that aren't don't have anything to do with a superhero community. Just get a little bit of a side cast.
Exactly. You know what?
him.
The great thing, because if he goes to Leslie Tompkins, he's the son of Batman. She knows this. She knows that. Everybody they hang out with, the Robins, they're his brothers, but they're more into this life. And like you said, if he has this or had this for sure, it's somebody who he might actually also, the other thing, because there are layers to this, but I don't feel that they're being presented fully. the idea that Damian might just want to prove himself to somebody besides being the son of Batman. Like, I want to show, he knows he's smart. He's one of the smartest kids, all this, but he wants to go somewhere too where he has to kind of show people that.
Right.
Also, the idea that he's one of the greatest fighters, maybe he does, like, that's something he doesn't want to deal with.
Right.
So he goes to a hospital and he wants to help. And you do get that. You get like, that's what this story makes you think. And it ends up being, but it might need to expand a little more, but it seems like we're coming to the end. But with that, the continuation of Damian and Batman's son and father, all that will continue. So I'm looking forward, though. I did hear rumors yesterday, and they're just rumors. Some of the guy who told me usually gets the things right, but he's been told that it looks like Batman and Robin will end in September when you end up having that new Batman. But this is the thing, too, that I don't like that because I think Philip Kennedy Johnson's doing a great job.
I think he's doing very well.
Philip Kennedy Johnson does like to meander sometimes. And, he likes to explore it. And maybe,
well, this is going to be a 7-issue arc. I mean, that's kind of long for a Batman and Robin.
Knowing maybe they told him, and again, this is when Batman hits the number one. Is there a chance that maybe there's a lot of new number ones and things like that in September? I don't know. Because, September used to be DC's big event month, too.
Right.
They used to have like 0-issue Villains month. That was all there. And maybe you'll have a bunch of, not reset, but have new runs and get everybody all fired up.
Well, I mean, a lot of miniseries are ending. Well, actually, probably coming up.
And
soon,
we'll start seeing when you get like things just starting and like, 6 issues that ends in September. People even know at one point I kind of said, and I kept saying, boy, everything seems to be lined up, and it was lined up for like All In and stuff like that when it was coming back. So when you have that, maybe it'll be a good thing that he knows he has that set amount of time and he can really develop around it. And that's ahead of time, not you're canceled in 3 months.
Yeah,
because usually the people have like 3-month wiggle room. So it might turn out okay. Now we're going on and on again.
Yeah, we're kind of meandering.
I did say, though, the idea of this is at the beginning, there's going to be a grace period where if you talk to a lot of different people, you kind of catch up with people. You talk about what they're reading. So that'll get better. But it is Batman and Robin number 19, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, Javi Fernandez on art, who I don't love, but I don't mind it.
Oh, I was missing the guest artist.
Yeah, you were missing.
One.
Well, that was better. I'm just saying that I'm like, okay, I'm more for the story anyway. But Marcelo Maiolo, color Steve Wands. On letters, you end up having James Reed as assistant editor, Ben Mears editor, and Rob Leben as group editor.
I don't know if I've heard that name.
Well, James Reed might be the assistant editor's getting coffee. I don't want to shame anybody, but maybe it's one of those. And I know that Yayo loves me saying the editors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The reason maybe the assistant editor could end up, advancing and whatnot, but Ben Mears on editing is pretty good. So you end up going into this, and it does look like you get Professor Bly at the beginning when he was in that warehouse back in the day. And you have that kind of faded out art. I wish it was done a little better. I wish there was a before. So you really know?
Because I honestly, I was just assuming that this was what was going on. Like Memento was setting up for his next thing or something.
I'm assuming, again, that this was the warehouse when Bruce ended up and they saw the professor go in and Bruce was like, I'm going to go check out. Remember, he's referenced it a couple of times saying, I saw some real bad shit in there.
Yeah,
and I don't want to talk about it. He's not really giving us all the info, but it ends up looking like Memento has him and he's going to kill him. He has a sickle and he's like, our time's almost through and whatnot. But this leads to, again, the big mystery is who's Memento. At first, Bruce said, that's not the real Memento. That's not Memento. And then kind of double back on like, it might be. I don't know who it is. So the big play is who is it going to be? And who else?
Someone who wears like a size 16 shoe. I don't know if you.
Yeah, look at those things. It's like clown shoes and a big top hat. Like just walk around and see if there's some guy in a top hat
and a massive hunchback.
The idea, if you're playing along at home, and who could it be? At a point, Eric thought it was Lautrec, the lady detective.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that, honestly, if it was, but I'm not really sure who it is.
I don't think it is now. I think the point in here where she finds out things and says, go and dig up she says, find out if there's a body in the coffin of the old professor. I don't know why she would need to know that if she was Memento, unless it's one of those like a little side thing of, I better start making things up. It felt weird. And the idea that Damian's kind of he's a smart kid until he starts talking sometimes in here, and he's befriended Lautrec a lot. And again, like you said, though, that feels like the Gordon part of it. But at the end, what is she going to say? Oh, by the way, I think I love it in here, jolly old Gotham. I'm going to say, I don't think that's the case. But if you did want to down the line, if the book does have time, maybe call Damian away to say, hey, you were really good. I need you to help me on this case.
Yeah.
And, well, Batman's no, I just want you. And maybe it'd be fun to see
that
a
would actually be pretty
Robin
cool.
deal.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
It could also show Batman's like, okay, I'm good with this. You just go. It would be cool. Though I'd love her talking to Interpol or whatever, the French deal of like, yeah, I'm going to get this like 13-year-old kid. He's really good. I'm going to bring him over here and try it out. But again, it might be one of those crazy things you could do. But it does look like it really is pushing that it's the professor. But in the here and now, while I said about Damian, is because Damian and Batman, they're running, through Gotham. They're trying to figure out. And Damian said, I know I can get Memento. And it played out the idea. You couldn't get him, but I'm good enough. I'll solve this and then I'm out. I prove myself and I'm out. And Batman's like, well, what were you talking about? Like, what have you figured out? And while this is going on, you do see that Batman is seeing visions. And some of them are maybe people. Some of them do also look like they're just people that he's thinking are ghosts or whatever that are talking, because at one point he almost runs over a lady that has a baby and she's really there, but they're running past all these people.
Yeah, these two guys have like Tommy guns.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
what I'm saying. Like he's like, it almost feels like they're like juxtaposing the like an angel, like a 50s thing, and he's seeing this. And, oh my God, it's all good. But that's the Gravedigger's Poppy. But as he goes, they're saying the devil has his face, the devil has his face, the devil stole his face. And again, what does that mean? I don't know. I
didn't really get anything from that.
They're going, and you end up where Batman says, hey, you say you've done some detective work. What you got? What you got, kid?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, well, I looked at all the things that happened and what they're mirroring. The old Arkham Asylum breakout, the USS Atlas fire, 1903, 1921, 1929. And then, okay. And it's done well where Batman had the voices, saying, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, how do these connect? And he's like, well, the original incidents are here and there. They're between different things, certain timeline, 8 and 18 years apart, recreated in chronological order. Each one at the time assumed to be accidental. He says, arguably, you could get, but he says they're all a result of Gotham elite exploiting the poor. Mm-hmm. So then Batman says, all right, now show me you have your Gotham history. Where will he attack next? And Damian says, oh, well, since he did have the idea that the elite were exploiting the poor, I think that it's going to happen in the old opera house. I'm like, that's nothing about the poor, David. Like, you just set up the idea of exploiting. And what happened was there was a faulty lighting apparatus that collapsed, killing the entire cast. Now, you could tell me they were underpaid actors, but the idea, you know what I mean?
I suppose you could say that everyone who's going to the opera is super wealthy and the people who are performing.
But that is a stretch.
I actually don't know how much opera people
I would think that if you're talking about that time period, they probably got paid enough. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a sketchy area where if it was, at the old vaudeville house where the people, they couldn't afford the opera and they went there and it burned down. Like, it's kind of a stretch. Also, it doesn't seem to be right. So again, what may happen then in that, I wish that when Damon says, if Memento maintains current patterns, the opera house is the likeliest next target. Now, maybe you could have played the idea of, well, Damien, didn't you know the opera house was torn down? Oh, yeah, I know that. It's on the grounds of the new hospital. Something like that, right?
Yeah, that would work pretty well. This is a nitpick, but, this is one of those things where they're talking about the detective work they've done instead of showing any sort of detective work. So, I mean, it is just kind of a lot of exposition of what is going to be happening.
And when you get to it, it really doesn't matter. It's just trying to show you that Damien's smart. Yeah. But then kind of does a weird swerve there with that opera house. But we know this. So
and during this, they're taking down two guys who have like a bazooka on them.
Yeah, they're just doing that as it goes. So, and then when you get into that, is this the setup, though, that with the Vauxhall Opera House should be the next thing that this, whoever it is, if it is the professor, if it would be Lautrec, they're not quite on the right time. Like the idea that Damien, if he was Memento, He knows the next
he'd be
thing.
really good.
Right? He'd be good. But the person doing it is a little off and is reacting. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. It just ends up when he says Opera House, I'm like, yeah, that's not great. Like,
this does end next issue?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does.
It's
I'm
got a
not
lot
sure,
to wrap up.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But again, if it's just like a Scooby-Doo ending of Aha, the professor, Professor Bly, it's you.
Right.
How was it you? Or look at whatever it would be. We'll have to see. But in the meantime, you get back to Damian realizes that Batman's not right. He's talking to things that aren't there. He's saying things weird. And it almost played out like he could have Damian like get mad because he's like, shut up. What are you saying, Daddy? And he's like, no, I'm not talking to you. But then you get a thing with Oracle. And also you show like there are some bad things happening in Gotham and they have to avoid. They just kind of have to move on and whatnot. But the big play, though, is that Damian, he's going to go off and work. He has his shift at the hospital. He's going to go and do that. Batman's going to kind of do his thing and says to Damian, do not, if something comes up, do not, don't interact with Memento. Don't fight Memento. If he comes up, you tell me, you get a hold of me and we'll do it together. Something that Damian never will listen to. He never does. Never. But then Damian goes and you see right away. And again, if you have Lautrec as a Gordon, it might also be like a Barbara Gordon in there because you do have Oracle talking to Batman. Yeah. And she's there. I want somebody at one point to say, okay, there, side chair psychologist, like she's there. I don't think that you should do this. Like, he never wants to hear this, but it's good that she's able to stand up to him and say, you're tracking a lot of kids lately. Like, this is weird. A good call out to detective. Actually,
it is. I like that I like when they weave in the titles. So, yep.
And I really wanted Barbara, though they fully know, because remember they all went to this kids, and even the thing like I want it where Batman said, "Yeah, well, tell your boyfriend Nightwing that he's giving people, trackers and things like that too. Like he's giving them little things to get a hold." But she ends up saying, "You're doing that." I went to Batman and go, "Oh shit, you know about that?" But they end up going, and she's like, you got to trust him. I don't, but she's been looking and I love the thing too, where also, that everything that they're talking, it's always recorded. Like anything in the comms is recorded. She seems to be giving like these side things. So everybody who would listen to this later realize everything she's doing, she is against. She's like, I'm looking at this for sure. And don't really like doing it. Yeah. Feel kind of creepy. But he's like, I'd like to. She's like, do you realize? Like he's a Nobel Prize. I think Bruce would realize that, but he's a good guy. He ends up, oh my God, he does this and all this. And Damian, maybe he just likes this guy. Maybe you're jealous. And then Batman's like, keep going. And then she's like, he does have a connection.
But it's so thin. It's so thin.
Again, this is where you get sometimes where you'll have those connections. I hate to say the deal, but it's almost like an Epstein thing that there are some times where a person just randomly meets somebody at a party, gets a picture, and then next thing, and I'm not saying any whatever. I'm just saying these things happen where you don't know. I get funded by a hospital. I don't know that the board of directors have a guy who in the wings ends up, he's a friend with Raish, and all this stuff kind of gets convoluted in. We don't know. And even Barbara says, you don't know that he even knows the connection. He just needs money sometimes. And what Batman thinks is straight up, they gave him funding and now he owes them. That's what the deal is. Now, this guy is pretty old too. Like, what would be the deal? And it seems real convoluted. But the problem is, Batman usually is right, and that's a shame. I hope that he's wrong. And I really wanted Barbara to come back and say, there is no connection. Yeah. I went through everything. But no, you have to keep looking. She's like, I'm done. I looked through everything. Yeah. There's no connection. To make Bruce realize, oh, God, that's the deal. What it reminds me of, and you mentioned the Joshua Williamson run of this. Now, in that, Batman was kind of he always would say things and then somebody would have to give him info, whatever. But at one point he's like, I know that Shush is involved with Hush. And you kept going. I'm like, I hope that it isn't. Because again, his only evidence was it rhymes. Yeah. And it kind of looks like, and then it ended up being it because you always end up having the problem of, well, Batman's always right. So we have to show it. I hope that he plays this out. And now at the end, it's a shame. But I hope that he's not really involved.
I have faith that Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing a little bit of some Batman character development here with his view of Damian. I have faith in that, but we'll see.
I hope that the idea is, oh my God, Damian, I ended up thinking all this. I was jealous. And at the end, he kind of gets a little bit. Damian calls Lautrec, like, hey, what's going on? And she's there and she's with Gordon and they're going to go see Scarecrow.
Lautrec is a little sus here too. I mean, she's kind of acting like Damian is flirting with her.
I want to tell you, the best thing could happen if Damian wasn't so young, but I'll still make fun of it because I had to look up the pronunciation because he's like, hey, how's the monkey? It's not a monkey. The real it's macaque. That's what that monkey is called. That is the pronunciation. I looked it up.
I didn't even think about that.
I swear to God, all through this issue, all I could think of throughout the whole thing. Oh, what was that? That was macaque. I just wanted that constantly. Like, oh, what are you worried? I'm worried about macaque. Like, you could have played so well with it. That's it. I was like, oh. And when I saw it, I'm like, please tell me that it's pronounced that way, please. Yeah. And I went to, now people may say you looked up the weird Google thing, but I went to Google to, pronunciation. I was laughing. So I sat there and I just kept hitting the thing to say it, macaque. I'm like, ooh, that's good. Hey, who solved the case? Macaque. Like, I need it. But you end up where they go. And this is where the art's a little like, where did they put Scarecrow? Holy crap. But he's kind of maneuvered things. It looks like he might have scribbled on the walls and things like that. But this
is a weird looking Scarecrow too. He is not right.
I mean, at one point, I guess it's hair that he's gone, but it looks like,
I don't know, but it's like tied in knots like around his face. Yeah.
And he is, the gravedigger's poppy. And he's like the learned woman again. I did. But what he's saying and what he says at the end, he remembers you, Catherine, your dear old professor. He can hardly wait to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what throws her. And she ends up calling Thompson back at the home base and says, hello, love. And I did look and I'm like, all right, the timing is right. I was wondering how when they open tomorrow, go and see if you can exhume the body. You know who I'm talking about. And now that's the thing too. She says, Thompson, it's me. Sorry to wake you, mate. Time sensitive. Hello, love. I need you to make a call to Broadmoor for me when they open. And then even says, yeah, the one. Like, she doesn't actually say that, but you would think it's the professor.
Yeah.
But maybe that's another twist.
I guess it could be a little.
Maybe that's the play of it's somebody else's body. Maybe it's the play. Obviously, he's not there. She says, make sure the body's there. But if he's there, they're going to have to see the deal. But I think right now she's like, it's him.
Yeah.
But it seems too on the money, But then we go where Damian's hanging out with Macaque.
Okay, he did name the monkey.
No, I don't see any name. I think it's there, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Just hanging with Macaque."
Yeah, just
that's what he says. It's the best. It's comedy gold. It is. But they're there, and Bruce comes in, and it does. I think that where you get Javi Fernandez, and again, I'm not the biggest of fans, but when I think he wants to make Bruce look very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and he comes in. It almost feels like the opposite. It feels like a kid going to talk to a mean dad. Like, this is how I would walk into a room with my dad. I'd be like, oh God, I'd practice what I'm saying. I'm going to ask him why MASH, that takes place during the Vietnam War, right, Dad? And then what are you, an idiot? And and then I'm like, oh no, I take off this turtleneck. I hate turtlenecks. I love the look of turtlenecks, but I hate shit on my neck, so I don't like it. But,
what?
I hate it. I can't say, it makes me feel like I'm being choked. Okay. I just don't like it. But Bruce comes in and says, hey, and this is weird too when he says, what if we went, is this dialogue to show that he is very uncomfortable? Because I
actually found this hilarious.
When he says, if we want, not if you want, if we want, we go out to dinner tonight, burgers, tacos, anything we want. I'm like, that is the biggest bullshit. Like, you have to say to him, what would you like, Damon? We'll do anything you want.
Yeah, we have to settle on the restaurant.
Yeah, I love the idea where, he said, Bruce, the guy knows he trained with psychologists, Freud, all this. Yeah. He has mentioned burgers and tacos because that's the only thing he wants. He doesn't want, like, Damien's like, oh man, there's a new rib place. He's like, listen, I said we want. Yeah. I don't like ribs. But also what gets me too is where he says there are times when Bruce, as a ruse, will take a random starlet to Paris just to make a thing. I'm like, to me, this should be like worldwide. We could go wherever we want. But he's like, burgers or tacos? And also, just to remind things, actually, I have a real big, I now have a sudden problem. Damien is a vegetarian. Like, he knows that.
Yeah,
he
that's
knows
true.
he's a
well,
vegetarian.
I mean, there's plenty of burger and taco vegetarian
You can tell me
options.
that. I'm thinking they're going to Mickey D's, which you would have something, or
Yeah.
they're going to Taco Bell. I would have thought Damien might say, you better think this through here. But yeah, he doesn't say vegetarian, though.
Yeah.
So now I have a big problem. But he says, yeah, Damien, though, says civilian food, plus I'm hanging with my cock. And then says, what about this? And then Bruce says, well, we will train. I like that. That was fun.
I found that funny. And I kind of feel like Bruce is being a little funny here. He might not be,
But why isn't Damien looking at it as funny? And even when Damien says and goes, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It feels like he's saying, I think that Bruce is joking.
I think he is too.
If they go out, and then he says, well, extend the training, and even says we might end up with that salt intake. And stuff like that.
And literally die.
That's a joke.
Yeah.
And Damien doesn't get it. Damien's just a dud here. I mean, he's hanging with McCook. And then he says, and the idea, once he said, oh, where are my shoes? Like, oh, God. He's like, I knew it. And they're over there.
You
I'm
can
like,
actually see the little dot on it.
Yeah, you see
too.
it there.
Yeah.
And I knew it. I'm like, yep, I knew something was up with those damn shoes.
Did you also like that Damien says he's going to eat their prepared meals? Who is preparing those meals?
The ghost of Alfred is what it is. It's funny, too, because he should have probably said, in my mind, the idea, because my son is big now in jiu-jitsu. He used to be big basketball, but he does a thing where he does do meal prep. At the beginning of the week, he makes all of his meals. He has these little containers. He puts them all in, and it's all basically the same thing all week. It's
right.
A chicken breast, some green beans, and some. But that's what it would more be. But I think that's what he's saying, and it would make sense. But without Alfred there or whatnot, it feels weird that, you look down and Bruce is there. And it is a weird thing that he hasn't really hired many people. Like, you would think that without Alfred, maybe he'd hire a big staff.
Okay.
Things
also,
or whatnot, but
this is something I did want to bring up, is that, like, this is the new manor they're in, right? Have we ever gotten them showing
like a tour?
Or talking about or anything other than Zdarsky just mentioning they're in a new house? Like, I don't think we've.
And they were even in that brownstone. This is the other one that they ended up using when he got the money
mansion.
back. Yeah, that new deal, and we haven't had it. That's true. And usually you want to have that as a big deal to show it. See if there's a new cave, how they do the stuff. So we'll have to see.
Oh, Bruce is wearing a turtleneck. That's why.
That's why you were.
Okay, I was really confused.
Yeah, I just randomly thought about turtlenecks. No, when he's there, that's like me, real uncomfortable with a turtleneck. Like, I'd always be fidgeting around and stuff like that. But I do like the look. You look fancy.
Oh, well, you have to also be massively buff to pull off a turtleneck.
Which this was when I was younger too. At one point, the one thing looks like he has a little bit of man boobs, but then maybe it was the turtleneck.
No, they're just his mass.
And he says to Damien, because Damien's not biting on these jokes.
No, Damien looks depressed in all of this.
And then he says, and I like this too with Philip Kennedy Johnson. That's why I think that he might end up not going the classic, lame route by the end, because this is usually where you'll have Bruce. He's coming as Bruce, and he'd say, listen, you're a great kid. You're good. You're clever. You could still do whatever you want with your life. Just don't give up the crime fighting. Gotham needs both of us. And I don't want you to leave. And usually you would have this moment where you'd get a hug. Oh, man, this. Nope. He says, other Robins stayed and you still lost them. And actually, he could have said, I stayed before I died.
Yeah,
I mean, I came back too.
Right.
We all die. And says, maybe if I give up Robin, we would fare better. And the problem with it, though, is that Damien earlier, even the Joshua Williamson thing, said they always were better as Batman and Robin. And I think that Batman's really worried that if he leaves being Robin, we have nothing.
I do like that he's being honest with him about it, too.
Yeah. And he says that. Now, again, there's a time where I was going to make a podcast with my son, Ray, a football podcast we were going to do. And then he bailed on me. But the idea is we weren't talking about anything but football. And that was the one thing. So I thought maybe if we do this and then we have fun or whatever, it's almost like if Damien's not Robin, he's afraid he's never going to see him again. He's just going to not have him anymore. And it says, and then when you finally get to it, Bruce says, well, maybe when we get back tonight, we could reset the board and play again because of the whole thing where Bruce got mad about the chessboard. And Damien, oh, what's this? Oh, me and Raish. Oh, Raish is dead. This sort of thing. And he said, yeah, I was a little bit, pretty hard on that. So maybe we could start a game. And that's where finally Damien says, really, I would like that very much. Thank you, Father, as he puts on his shoe that has a tracker and then goes off. And not just a tracker, he really wants to listen in.
Oh,
Now,
yeah, it's a bug, yeah.
if you have this going on, you just said, at least, I guess you can't put it under the sole. You can't put it where it's just the thing on the back of the shoe.
It's a white shoe, and he puts this big red dot on it.
It would be funny. It's like Damien's into those shoes that when you walk, they light up all the time that my kids used to get. Like, but no, it's just this thing on the back.
That actually
He
would be
doesn't
really
even put it in like a lace. Like Batman has some tech.
Yeah.
So he's listening in. And a lot of this stuff is just, Bashar saying, hey, you're really good. I want to show you this. Like, there's nothing really that bad about it until you end up where Barbara's already said, oh, there is this tie. He's waiting for this tie. The only reason really the tracker is there is because Memento shows up. We end up having Bashar, and you're thinking the play is, oh, we're going to go in this elevator, Damien. Oh, we're going to go to the League of Assassins floor. And they're going to get out. There's going to be a bunch of League of Assassins, whatever. They go. The elevator goes wonky. Bashar seems to think this is weird. Doesn't feel like, but you're supposed to feel sus. You're supposed to think.
And Damien finds the tracker because he steps in like some coffee in the elevator. Coffee, yeah, I don't know.
Why
about
would
that,
you
but...
end up? He's like checking his kicks because he stepped on coffee, and then sees the tracker and says, partners and trust, you said, into the tracker, which is funny because it almost plays off when Batman was talking to nobody earlier, and Robin's like, what? And then Bashar's like, what? I'm sorry? What did you say to me, kid? But he ends up where he throws and this is what got me confused. I didn't realize, okay, they're in the elevator at this point, but when he steps in the coffee and leans over, I thought that he threw the tracker, like it is a tracker he sees, and they're listening in. Why wouldn't you step on it and crush it? Why wouldn't you throw it outside the elevator? Why wouldn't you just get rid of it? But he just drops it on the floor, and that's what allows Batman then to still hear what's going on. I actually thought, oh, crap, this guy has 7 trackers. And in his kicks, I was like, man, he's an asshole. But he ended up where he still hears, and Damien, I guess, assumes, I'll throw it down and leave the elevator, when the deal is, and it'll just be in there. But when it opens up, because things are going wrong, Batman's freaking out. And you open up and there's Memento, and it's just full out, just hunchback Memento there, and ends up slashing Bashar.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Damien says get back at one point, but he looks dead. I mean, it looks like
and then Damien just has, just like PTSD flashback to the girl that he couldn't save. Well, I mean, she lives, but
yeah, that's the thing, though. That's where I would say that there's no way that Bashar can live. But I didn't think she could either. I mean, you even see, she's in a puddle of her own blood. She's ripped apart, and she did live. So maybe there's a chance that he does.
And, it's hard to know how fast the Gravedigger's Poppy affects Damien. It might be that
that could be too when he gets out.
Actually, I guess Batman see. But then Batman's also I don't know.
And at that point, he's just, in my mind, that elevator door keeps opening and closing. It's like, ding, because he's stuck in it. Batman just walks in and is like, yep. I would have loved it in a side deal. If I could draw, I'd give you a little bit where Batman smiles when he sees the body.
He sees the body. Like, that's what you get, you League of Assassins scum.
Oh, it'd be great. Batman has to get there, so you have that timing. I still haven't really paid attention to that much, but I got to get there, so he ends up doing,
right.
Yeah,
right.
That's been throughout, but I haven't really
And he is having
attention.
Issues right now. He is seeing all sorts of shit.
He's seeing a lot of crazy stuff, and he's like, Valkyrie program, and it's pretty cool. You end up where he gets ejected out, connects to the Batwing, and it's flying him through. Well, in that, it's not him just thinking. He is wrecking a lot of downtown. And that panel, I was a little confused, like, what is he doing? But it's just a Batwing going.
Were you confused by him saying disregard structural safety zones, just don't hit anything? And it's like, whoa. And that seems like an oxymoron.
And downtown, it's like they're getting a ticker tape parade of glass.
Yeah.
Like all fun. And he goes, and then it's cool, though. And he's like, hey, and this is cool Batman stuff. Hey, this is where Damien Schrecker last was. Get me above. I'll crash through. Don't worry about me. And he's going to go through, hell or high water to get there. And then when he gets there, though, you do see Bashar, who, again, I thought that girl was dead. He looks very dead.
He looks very dead. And I guess that Batman is seeing a hallucination of him being alive, I guess he is dead. I don't I still don't know if I fully understand how this Gravedigger Poppy works.
And then says, Bruce, and I've seen it. The devil wears Nicodemus Crow's face, Bruce, and now he has your son as well. And the idea that, it is the not really Memento, it's somebody else kind of deal. So you would expect it's we may even get the idea that when at the beginning we're going to get like a Dread Pirate Roberts, that the idea that Memento needs in his mind, that he's so obsessed with continuing this deal of, hey, I got to keep going with these crimes down the line. Obviously, most people don't live hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
So he ended up getting the professor. And maybe the play might be he does this in a way that somebody gets inspired and gets really crazed up and ends up wanting to continue by doing something to them. They continue being Memento. And the thing about that would be interesting. The one person who is obsessed now is Lautrec. And you might have the professor, if it is him, wanting to carry it on with Lautrec as well. And so maybe we'll see where we think Lautrec dies, and then we see later that she's alive and she's starting to talk nonsense and stuff like that. That'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if it is the professor, why is he doing it? And if it is the idea of carrying on in a way, I think that would be pretty cool. But that's kind of my prediction by the end, especially with the idea of as the original face and things like that. But again, this is Bruce thinking, he's seeing things. I think that what we're having there is through the visions, we're seeing Bruce is still trying to work the case. The idea that it isn't really Memento, it's somebody else. And now this guy has Damien and I have to go. Because when he comes here and Bashar is there, what are you going to think if you're not even, oh my God, he has Damien, because Damien's not there anymore. So it's crazy. But I liked it. A bunch of people ended up, again, I said at the beginning that they said, oh, it's a down issue. It's not great. I think some people might have been taken aback by getting back to the art and maybe liking the fill-in art, which, again, it was better. I do agree. But I like the story.
I like the story. I do think that this is one of Javier Fernandez's better issues in this one. I am bummed that I do think Philip Kennedy Johnson is writing some really cool action scenes, and it gets a little lost.
Yeah, I agree. But even so, I liked it. What would you give it?
Honestly, talking about it, I think I would give it a 7.
No, I think I'm a 7.5. I think I'm a little bit, but still, I still like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think a 7 is a great score for me.
I think this book I say it's my favorite all-in book, but then I remember, I really like that as well. But it's one of my top books, though. I really do like it. It'd be on my do or die pull list, definitely. But we'll move on to the next book, which is not.
Yep.
Me and you are the only ones who don't like this, and we will promise that we'll go through this quick. Because I've done enough of the hemming and hawing about why we don't like it and wondering, hoping people don't get mad at us. If they're mad at us, they're already mad at us. It is Batman Dark Patterns number 4. I got to get to the credits here. And of course, I'm sure it's a fancy book, so they have to be at the end, which drives me nuts. No, where the hell are they? This is Eric. This would drive Eric nuts, where I ended up, I thought I had them at the beginning to get them. And,
I've got them if you want me to read them or something.
Give the credits.
Okay, sure. We've got Dan Waters on writing, Hayden Sherman on art, Triona Farrell as the colorist.
Oh, thank God.
Frank.
I am at it now.
Frank Vodic as the letterer, and Ariana Turturro on editing, Rob Levin, group editor.
Yeah. So you end up going into this, and we ended up having the 3 issues of the Wound Man, and that kind of ended. I thought, you thought as well, it ended with a lot of exposition. It ended up with, oh my, the real victim here is the Hurt Man and everybody else, and then you just move on. I mean,
let me tell you, take me back to Wounded Man, because this is.
People are I don't like I'll give you one thing, that at least in this one, it seems to be a new version of Scarface, but it ends up being not with Wesker. It seems like Scarface's spirit has inhabited this building, and
I don't know if it's going to be like Wesker is like stuck in the PA room or something. I don't know.
We'll have to see. But in the meantime, you're just going to go into this, and hey, Dr. Sarika's examined the body. We see the doctor. He's continuing on. But in my mind, this whole play of, these people are being killed and being holed up into this tower that is going to be torn down, but people won't leave. But then you get, there's some gangsters in there, and they have this person hostage, and then they throw somebody out. It's just thrown at you. And then when you get to it, I'm like, I don't know if this is that interesting.
Well, I thought this was going to be Haunted Tower.
Yeah, well, it's haunted by
it's not at
Scarface,
all.
I guess. That's what it seems. So when you get there, a cop had been thrown out a window.
Yep.
And his partner Price, I guess, is in there still. Batman says, okay, I'm going to go take care. You get what I think in this book, you get a lot of dialogue that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's very dialogue heavy.
And Gordon will say, like, the entrance is barricaded from the inside. The message is clear. No cops. If we do try and go in, we risk starting a war. Good people live there, too. But Bleeding has long been a hive of gang activity, and everything is exposition through dialogue. Anything that happens, Batman will go into a room, and then somebody will say...
And everything is explained immediately to him. Yeah.
And when people, like, Batman figures things out, but when Gordon is obviously... Dan Waters does not want to use too much narration, but he uses the dialogue, and it's not natural.
Yeah.
The idea of Gordon just yelling this, hey, all he has to say to how many times, and even if this is early, the idea of, hey, they said no cops. If we go in, they're going to shoot everybody. That's all you need. You don't have to be like, good people live their lives too, and Bleeding has long been a hive of gang activity. Batman knows this, and it just feels forced.
It's one of those things where I think really good writers let the story unfold as it goes and kind of throw you in. I think Dan Waters just gives you everything right off the bat and then walks you through it.
And then till the next thing he has to explain.
Exactly.
That's what it felt to me. I put in my one little note, I put the writing is clunky to the point where you go from one bit of exposition to meander to another exposition, and everything feels forced to be like, okay, he needed these three things, and that's how he connected them.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it doesn't really work, because then you end up where Batman's walking around. I like that he goes into like a room that's empty. Goes in, and that's pretty funny. But there's also like, now it stands as a relic. He's talking about Bleeding Towers. So it's the idea where, okay, we already got it. Gordon already said, hey, there's some good people here, whatever. But then we have to, now it stands as a relic of an age where it seemed as though those down on their luck might actually be provided for by the state. But then it went to this in 215 rooms. It's so much over the top that it just pulls me out at points.
Yeah.
And then they're looking for this, this cop, this woman. And then when we do see her, she's strung up in a way that looks visually like, okay, well, that's crazy. What are they doing? But in the meantime, all it is because she's strung up like a puppet, and it ends up being the play of Scarface, but it doesn't play out really well.
And the problem is that Scarface isn't really a puppet. He's
just... Yeah, well, Wesker's just a guy who thinks that this puppet deal, and then it gets convoluted in this, right? About the idea, and it's like, I guess the play here is to do, hey, you always think that Wesker's the thing or whatever. Well, it's actually Scarface, and now Scarface is, so it gets a little wonky.
Yeah,
it does. But I think people like it in the surface level because it's, hey, look, it is Scarface. We haven't seen him in a while, but in the meantime, you do end up saying, and this is when I think the art really fails, and this is just a little thing where these guys come in. They saw Batman and they say, hey, Batman, you're bullshit. We know everything about this place. We got to go. So they go back to this guy. Hey, where's the boss? We need the boss. And this guy says, oh, the boss is here. So you end up where you do see the puppet. I swear to God, at this point, it was the lady that this guy just slapped. Oh, I love you, baby. And says, and I'm not happy. One get. So it's the B's to the G's. It's actually the puppet Scarface talking. But the way that the word thing goes, I thought that the play was that I thought it was a lady disguised. I thought that was Wesker. And I thought that was funny. I'm like, oh my God, what is Wesker doing? But it was the puppet. And you get that play. Wesker's not really there. So you end up having Scarface. And the reason why Scarface can't say G's, B's, he says the G's, is because Wesker can't. Wesker's the one who has the speech problem.
Well, it's because
he's trying to do
trying to do the thing. Yeah,
he's trying to do the ventriloquist thing. So that's where he can't quite do it right. It's the funny thing that's his whole thing. Ventriloquist, but he doesn't do it well.
Because bees really show you moving your mouth.
That's the cool thing, and that is at least he gets that.
Right.
this whole play, we'll have to see. Maybe it'll become fun, but the whole thing seems to be as if the main guy is Scarface. He's there. He doesn't need anybody to do things. He's just doing it, and we'll see how that plays. But in the meantime, you do have Batman go through another bit of exposition. I dealt with Wesker. And when I did, I ended up realizing that he's so obsessed with the doll. I smashed the doll. That triggered him. I said, well, let's take him down. That's just played because, again, I don't think that you end up having, Wesker here, obviously, because he says it isn't. And so what would Batman do now? Well, what I think he should do is smash that damn puppet one more time. But then that's where you end up Scarface, who does seem to have a body there, but then says, I needed a new Gotti. It's now the tower. I'm like, all right. And in the meantime, you have people going through in lockers and they're going to get these wooden faces because that's part of the deal. It ends up, I'll tell you what I think. And at the end, you just end up Batman trying to save this cop. Again, she's strung up like a marionette type thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you do have Batman call back to that doctor and say, hey, have you figured out anything about the body? And he goes through too much explanation, I feel, about a body bouncing.
Well, and it's like,
because it's about this bounce.
And the whole thing is that Batman is trying to figure. It's a big building. Batman needs, to cut down the time. He needs to be able to find this faster. He asked,
right?
He asked Dr. Sirico, about where the body could have been thrown from, and all he finds out is that it was thrown from 5+ floors up. And it's like, well, yeah, no duh, it was thrown from higher up.
He even went in. I think when he even said the point where there no cops, I think he says, I'm going to go through a window on the 5th floor. So he's already there, but he's got to figure this out. So what he does, this is the best too, because basically he's like, listen, hey, are you sober? This poor guy, he tries to help, but he's like, I'm as sober as I'll be talking to you. And he's like, Bleeding Towers, I'm having difficulty navigating it. Tell me about the body beyond the obvious. He needs to know things quick. Right? He's saying, this woman is in trouble. I need to narrow it down a bit, please, because he already went in one room wrong. So he's like, narrow it down. And the doctor does everything but. He ends up like, just imagine, you're like, oh my God, I got to find this. Give me the info. And he's like, do you want to know about the impact rooms? Whether I can tell you, like he says, do you want to know about the impact wounds? Whether I can tell you how high this poor soul fell from which floor? Damn right, that's what he wants. That's what he asked you. Why are you repeating it? But again, this is Dan Letters getting clunky with the idea that he thinks that he has to exposition it. And then, like you just said, the thing is when you want to know info. What Batman wants to know is, can you figure out how far did he fall? And the guy says, well, this might not be fully accurate, but I think he fell 6 floors or more. It might be, oh my God, the way that this looks, the way he did, I did some calculations, floor 9 or above, whatever it would be. But he's like,
it's getting too clever for something that doesn't, it doesn't make you look cool. Like at least make the payoff good, but it was for nothing.
But the thing is, terminal velocity height for the human body is generally lower than people expect. We can see the same damage in the body that's fallen 30 feet as a body that's fallen out of an airplane. Batman is desperately trying to find a woman that we know is strung up, and she's still alive, it seems, but it might not be for long. And he now is going like, isn't that neat? I heard a podcast about it. Like, listen here, Google search, shut your mouth. Like, what is it? And he's like, having said that, like, what is he doing? He's doing a performance now. There's evidence of multiple postmortem impacts, if you understand what I mean. At this point, Batman's
Jim, little do you know is that formaldehyde makes you really talkative.
Really talkative. And then Batman says, he bounced. Okay?
Yeah.
That does not matter at this moment. You do have, and then basically says, I think the 5 floors somewhere. Like, all that says nothing. And he says, that means I'm going up. I thought he was already there. But the idea of this whole thing just throws out. And if you do look, and I'm guessing because you can hardly see, it's very stylistic. You have a lot of bounce on the page, the credits page. Mm-hmm. So it's the voice of the tower, ding dong, bounce. But so I think that just this idea of bounce just got in Dan Waters' head.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't even notice that, but you're right.
But why?
Yeah.
Why did you? I actually went back because I thought the play was going to be like, that's the way the ball bounces was going to be the name of the deal. But I'm like, I don't know why you're calling a guy and say, listen, how far do you think he fell from the impact ones? And if the guy says, well, I was thinking, no. I'm asking one thing. Tell me, because I'm heading up as this is going on. I don't want to go past the level. I don't, whatever.
Mhm.
Tell me. And then Batman just ends up where he's like, okay, well, I guess I got to go forward, and just keeps going. It doesn't really change anything. And then you end up where the building, they start throwing furniture out like they're in West Virginia. And you end up where, oh my God, look out, and things are happening. And then all of a sudden, you have this overall thing yelling to Batman about, you think that you took me down before. Hey, it's time that and really wanting to push the bees at this point is, geez, it's time to show them we mean business. And even then, I hope that it's right. There are certain syllables where you could still, if you're a bad ventriloquist, do it, but it's a combination of some things. But you end up like, what are they doing? What are they doing? Well, what they're doing is like spray painting shit and doing stuff where you need this. They're pushing this stupid couch out to make it look like the cigar.
Like a cigar,
that's in the deal, because now the building looks like, I'm telling you, there are people, if you're on the ground there as Gordon and
you have no idea what it looks like.
There could be no way.
Yeah.
They're like,
you've got to standing 3 blocks away to fully
they're
understand
painting
it.
something. I don't know what's happening. I don't get it. Like, are they going to push the couch out? That's just sitting out there. But they're yelling, and then I have a new Gotti now, Gatman, a Getter one, and you're standing in it, and it's like, oh no, the building is haunted by Scarface. Like,
yeah.
First off, Eric loves Scarface.
I love Scarface too. Yeah,
Scarface, when the things come in, it's interesting and whatnot, but it's not like I'm sitting there like, oh my God, Scarface, I'm so scared. The idea of this building, like, just demolish it.
Yeah, well, and like that's the thing is like, there's nothing supernatural about the ventriloquist or Scarface, so
that's what makes it funny.
So it must be some sort of technical thing going on. He must like I said, he must be in like a PA room, or the way the sound echoes or something. I don't know.
Usually when you get Batman again, you have to remember this is an early Batman, but the idea at one point you do end up having, Batman, oh my God, what is this? You have that main guy, but why are they covering up his face then when he shows up there?
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird play. And also, it's just like he seems to know. It seems to me that Batman knows that it can't be Wesker, that it's somebody else. But even if it just ends up being, oh, it's that other guy, but he seems to think that's the boss.
He does say it's his voice, so I don't know.
And the weird play of this is the idea you almost have to get supernatural with some things in, and I really don't want that.
No, I don't either.
You know what I mean? What are we going to have? It's like, what did they get, some voodoo doll? It's going to start dancing and stuff like Weekend at Bernie's. Again, you end up where Batman's like crushing things, and he crushes the body again. That's the deal. And he says, this isn't Wesker. I thought at one point he crushed this guy's head. I was like, oh man, that guy was a puppet too.
Yeah, I did. I got confused by the perspective of it. I did too.
It was the only good thing you had is that the suit that you had. But I had to look again. I'm like, oh crap! At one point, I thought Batman squished him.
That would have actually been wild if everyone in this building was actually a puppet or a dummy,
just going around. Yeah, and then they start yelling like, "Who's the real dummy, Batman?" Like, you have fun things, and then Damian says, "My God." That would be great. It all ties in.
You really like that monkey.
I loved it. I love that monkey so much. But yeah, and then it's Scarface Towers, and I'll give you the thing that I'm like, okay, this seems like it might be more down the line of, okay, maybe I could like this more than the Wound Man. And then I think about it, I'm like, this is goofy. Like when you get to the end,
goofy.
I think that the problem will be is that I actually want Goofy. I mean, I want Goofy. I don't think it's on purpose. I want some fun here. And like all of a sudden you have this crazy stuff going. I think Dan Waters is like, this is going to blow people's minds. And again, you're doing a Scarface thing, and I think people will react to the idea we don't get Scarface a lot.
No, we really don't.
So it's pretty
anymore.
cool. So you have that, but I don't know. Just seems wonky at this point. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but I told you before we started recording that even though I did get used to Hayden Sherman's art in that first arc, I kept saying, I wish that the Wound Man would have been more detailed, but I got used to his thing. But something like this originally was supposed to be new artist each arc. And I think a new artist on this, and it could have been somebody worse, whatever, but it would have made me feel like, okay, this is starting another thing, and it feels fresh. And oh my God, maybe that could have wowed me a little more. But being the same thing, and then kind of just like, at this point, almost saying, hey, that Wound Man, sayonara, sucker, let's go. Because that still felt like it should have some things going on. You get the Doctor still, but even then, it's wonky. But we'll see.
I don't know.
People still like it. But
the thing with me with Hayden Sherman on this is that he was doing some weird manipulation of the layouts in the last arc. And this one, it feels like an editor said, that's really cool. Go over the top with it. And because the layouts are a little much.
What we have said with these 3-issue arcs is there's a lot of things left behind. There's not a lot of space. So you have to really go. That's one thing where I think Dan Waters, it's hurting him because now he thinks I have to exposition everything to get it out there. And that's why, and again, that's why I don't think that that's a writing thing that he like, oh, that's him all the time. I think that he is worried. I got to get things out there. I can't waste time to show Batman this, so I'll exposition it. Feels unnatural. But then when you have a full spread page where Batman's in this tower and you have things that mean nothing, you see a rat in a room. We get it. The place is a shithole and people were counting on living there and didn't want to leave. That's fine. But you don't need a full spread of a guy trying to work an out of order elevator and a girl bouncing a ball. Again, bounce. This bounce thing is,
right.
I'm telling you, it's coming up big. There's going to be some more bouncing, and she looks like she's in The Shining.
Oh, she does look
right.
Like
That's what it looks like. Blood's going to come pouring down that hall in a minute. God. Get the hell out of there. My cock. You end up, but again, like Batman already did tell us, and if it was the idea, Batman's like, "What's up with this place? Oh, this place is slapping." You see and hear that there's still people there. You see that this poor guy trying to work the elevator, he's a little off in this. So you didn't need Batman to go through exposition about it when you see it here. And so either or, do one or the other. Don't double up.
Yeah.
And then it's just at the end, they go, did you hear me? I said the boss says if we got to wait much later, he's going to escalate things. I'm like, none of this really works out. I like when Batman almost yells boo in that room and nobody's there.
And no one's there.
That made me laugh. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, but it even the art didn't really play it out as much.
No, the art actually didn't show it very well at all.
Should have pulled back that there was nobody there. It was like some old guy watching TV. Like, what the hell are you doing, the Batmans? But so you have it. What would you give it?
I'm pretty down on this issue. I think I'm a 4.5.
Yeah, I think I'm a 5. I'm like a 0.5.
I just
more enthused than you. I'm just a
the
standard 5.
The problem is that last arc, I actually thought that Dan Waters had some pretty good plot going. I just didn't think he executed it very well. This one, I don't really care about this plot, like, at all.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some things that are brought up, like, exactly, like, I'm not looking for it. I can't even say that. I want to know what's going on. How is Scarface able to do this? But that's not me interested in the story. What I'm interested in is, did you mess something up? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how is that happening? Like, I need to see that just so I know, okay, at least you didn't make up some crazy ass shit. But the actual story of grabbing a cop in this tower, it seems like you have to develop it more. If you think about it, it might be however it goes with the idea that I need a body, a Gotti, and take me to that tower and we'll make it that. But that doesn't really work overall. And it just seems like you're caught in this moment that some people obviously seem to think, oh, this is cool. Like it does this. But what is the background of it where there's just this puppet who's like, I need a Gotti. Get me to that building.
Why is he in this building?
That's what I'm saying. And they're there and they seem to be trying to cause a problem. They said the building was going to get destroyed, but people wouldn't leave it. Now you have gangsters. So it was always with the gangsters. So is this, I mean, the idea that puppet Scarface can't take it, that the building's going to go down, or Wesker has it? Well,
I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of tie to Wesker.
Wesker has my mom lived here and this and that. I think that's what it's going to be about. But it loses track of things very quick about how it's set up. And then you're just in the moment. I think some people are, hey, that's cool. Just go with it.
Yeah.
But the setup and everything is like, why? Why is this happening? What's going on? So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they moved the gravestones, but they didn't move the bodies. That's what happened. You get haunted Scarface, but he seems to be talking. And
I don't even know the last time we saw Scarface. Do you?
No. Well, the one big one, it was weird, but it was Wesker in the Tom King I Am Suicide, but that was way back. And I think we've had him.
Way back.
I think we've had him a couple other times because every time it shows up, me and Eric are waiting to see if they do the B's and the G's right. And a couple times they didn't. So that's a shame. Also, I would have liked if Batman ended up, because he crushes that puppet's head. The poor little guy, he crushes him. I like where when Batman grabs the guy and the cigar comes out of the mouth because you would think it'd be attached to the bottom, like as a puppet, but it comes out. But then when he crushes it, I went to look to see if cleverly, all of a sudden we saw, I see a little thing that could be a speaker. Like the idea, because legit, when his voice comes, sometimes they do that with it, but it is coming out as if it's an electronic type of voice coming out of him.
Yeah.
It would be funny. We just see a pull string and he just says shit about Batman. like, I'll get you, Catman. That's all it is. But it's weird. But we'll see. Maybe something will come from this. We were more intrigued by the Wound Man. Maybe that ended up fizzling out. Maybe this will get better. We'll see.
Yeah,
but I'm at a 5, you're a 4.5. So that is it. That is actually it for the podcast. So we are done.
Cool. Pretty
cool week. Again, we didn't like this, but a lot of people did. So a lot of good books this week, and one of the better weeks, I think, overall from DC, even including the Absolute Superman that me and Gray end up doing each Friday night when one of those books out. I'm giving a little bit of a commercial here, even though I think we have 2 Absolute books next week. So I'll be talking about that.
Oh, is this Martian Manhunter or Flash?
No, I think it's Flash and Batman come out this week, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll be going off now and telling everybody what we're going to be doing next week. But thanks for joining me, Tom. Thanks for joining me as well. And again, people have reached out and said, oh man, how many people? Everybody's jumping in. And sometimes Tom might do 8 books with me. Sometimes one. Sometimes Gabe will do one. But it's all going to be what comes up in a week and whatnot. But eventually, I don't know. I'm telling you, eventually I want to get where everybody has like, okay, Batman and Robin. That's who I talk to Tom with, because then you get, the things going and people are, get your sensibilities and things with that and goes. But people really do seem like to have it mixed up and have things with a bunch of people. So we might mix in some other people.
Whatever.
I'm not even opposed to points where maybe 3 people get on and we have, I hate editing that, but I'll do that.
That would actually be kind of interesting.
That'd be different. It hasn't happened since Reggie passed. So, and I'm telling you, I would grit my teeth every time I had to edit stuff and whatever with 3 people, but we could certainly do that. But thanks as always, Tom. Thanks everybody. But we'll be going off to see what is coming up next week. All right. And that is it for this week. One of the weird things, and somebody did ask me, I think I brought this up before, but maybe I haven't. Somebody said, hey, why don't you have your book of the week anymore? It's kind of weird. I could tell you my book of the week, but again, we just talked about them and without having 2 people kind of discuss it because everybody else has their own big thing. What I should end up doing, I don't know. I was going to say maybe by the end of each segment with somebody, I should say, oh, what was your book of the week? But that might get a little convoluted as well. So unfortunately, we're not going to have that much, but I will tell you that mine was a tie between the Green Lantern Corps and also the Aquaman. So those were my books of the week. But in the deal, I really liked Absolute Superman. I thought that was getting better than it was. And finally, Krypton's Destroyed. I mean, I never knew that I'd be celebrating so much death that I did once I saw that Krypton was destroyed. And me and Gray ended up talking about that on our live stream of the Absolute books. Again, every time there's Absolute books, we'll end up talking about them at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTubes, and that's at Weird Science Comics. Maybe next week when we do have, because we're going to start with those books. We have 2 Absolute books next week. We've never had that before. Pretty cool. Maybe when I make the thumbnail for the show, I won't reuse one from another book because I ended up putting up the deal for the Absolute Superman number 5. And for some reason, I had the thumbnail for Absolute Wonder Woman number 5. It really upset me, but my only excuse is that I'm an idiot, is what it is. And actually, I ended up putting up the stuff, and then that's when I got on that stupid bike, and I'm getting hit, and I completely lost my mind. But me and Gray will be joining each other. We'll be heading to the YouTubes on Friday, and we'll be talking about Absolute Batman number 6. Which I actually have a copy. Somebody just sent me a copy today and said it will blow my mind. And then Absolute Flash number 1, we'll be talking about that as well. Probably more deep dive into that one since it's a new number 1, Jeff Lemire. I read it and it's really good. I think people will enjoy it. I think that this Absolute stuff is starting to hit. As they say, down at the youth center, it's starting to cook. Let it percolate, I think they say, right? Give it its flowers. I've heard somebody say. I don't know. I'm an old man. But here's what else we're going to be talking about. Batman and Robin, Year 1, number 6. That is something that I always end up talking with my man, Zach. So me and Zach will be talking about that. We have Batman Superman World's Finest, number 37. Again, most of these books, I don't end up knowing who I'm going to talk to yet. We're still in that gray area of grabbing people. And most of the time that the people who end up doing the books, I want to keep it kind of consistent within those books, but that's probably not going to happen either because people are going to dip in and out and whatnot. We also have the Catwoman, number 74, a book. I'm a big Catwoman fan. I'm way more a Catwoman fan than Eric was, but he's been liking this Catwoman run. And I do dread kind of talking. That's another book that I did lean heavy on him because at points I was so disinterested and not enjoying it. But I'm hoping that what happens when I need to like really buckle down, that I'll start enjoying it or it might get better. And just as another aside, there's a lot of asides when I'm talking by myself, right? There's like 10 asides, maybe 10 and a half. But somebody did ask, is Eric reading the book still? Is he still reading the book? So first off, I have no idea what Eric's doing because he doesn't talk to me for some reason now, but I do think he's probably reading them still. I think that he's at least probably going to keep going with books that he had those big ideas that things were going to happen. That really is just going to dash his hopes down because they'll never happen. And he should have listened to me. But I do think he's probably keeping up with some of those. We have Challengers of the Unknown. And J-Man ended up asking at one point, why aren't we doing that? And really the reason was, for the most part, Eric would tell me what he wanted to review or not, and that's what we did. Maybe I'll try to find somebody. Maybe I'll catch up and end up doing that as well. I'm trying to mix in a lot more, but something that I will be doing and something that Simon asked if he could do with me, drunk, possibly, probably, but it's DC versus or DC Sonic the Hedgehog #1. That crossover, he really wants to do that. So we're going to end up doing that. We also have Detective Comics number 1095, Nightwing number 124, a surprise entry, Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor #2. If you're not aware, the first issue of the series did come out in 1943. Is when it did come out. They're finally getting back to that. It's amazing. I thought that was going to be a book that Mark Waid was going to leave in his will to somebody to complete. And maybe he did. I don't know. The New Gods #4, another book Eric was really liking. The Question, All Along the Watchtower #5. Ooh-wee. You like that too. Titans #21 and Zatanna #2. And as I'm saying this, a lot of damn books. Let's see what's going on, especially if I add stuff like the Challenge of the Unknown. But I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go the extra mile, as they say. I'm going to count it. It's 1, 2, 3. This is great podcasting. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 books plus 2 absolute. What the heck? What is this? The olden days? We may actually get to a point, even with the Spotlight being separate, of an 8-hour podcast. It may happen. May not, we'll see. I'm going to try. If I can find somebody who's willing to talk Challenges of the Unknown, maybe I can grab my man Sully. Maybe that seems like something I could get Gray to do. But Gray's already doing the 2 absolute. Oh, goodness. I don't know. Maybe Challengers will not make the cut. But 2 of those books will be on the Patreon Spotlight. And I kind of have my ideas of what will be on, but I'll leave that up to the badasses, the Get Fresh crew. And once again, if you want to help us out, you want to get all this stuff and say, man, I really like the cut of that guy's jib. I think that he really has got it going on. Maybe I'll join that Patreon. All you have to do is go over to the patreon.com/Weird Science. It'll be in the show notes or description, anywhere that you're seeing or listening to this podcast. And there are a ton of shows. I mean, I'm telling you, we have a plethora times 80 of shows. We have obviously our badass Patreon Spotlight every Thursday night. For the most part, we end up having that, but some things are brand new. Me and my man Gray started a new podcast, new reading club, the Usagi Yojimbo Reading Club. We are only 1 episode in. And if you do end up going and say, oh man, I missed all this or whatever, everything that we've ever done is still on the Patreon. You can find it and listen to it. But we also have manga stuff. We have a Manga Monday show. We have a book of the month. This week's book of the month is Star Trek Green Lantern, The Spectrum War, doing that with Stork. We have our Year 1 podcast that we just started, Daredevil Yellow, on there. See, it's like tons of stuff, right? We have an indie podcast exclusive to the Patreon. We also have a Mark Miller podcast that me and my man Mark are doing The Kingsman at the moment. We have a Walking Dead reading club. Oh my goodness, I'm just going down the line. I'm actually scrolling through just to say what we are doing. One of the other things, a Hellboy podcast with Simon. Sober Simon shows up for that. He shows up for other things drunk, but he means business when we do the Hellboy reading club. Just know that we have a ton of things, and I think that most of the stuff is top quality. The things that aren't might be because of me, but it's usually and has been me talking with a bunch of people that you have been hearing on the podcast. Stork, Tom, me and Tom do an Elseworlds podcast. Everybody is involved. It's pretty cool. It's a big community. You also get in the Slack chat that we mention a lot while we're talking, and everybody has a good time and has like a family affair is what it seems like. But that's it. I'm talking and my lip is killing me and I'm babbling on and on and on. One of the problems of doing things with my three least favorite people, as I say, me, myself, and I. So with all of that, thanks everybody. I really do appreciate all the people reaching out. Next week, unless I get hit by something, we will get back to the regularly scheduled format. I will have news and we'll have some mail, hopefully. Again, Weird Science, dccomics@gmail.com, and maybe even some other things. I have some other ideas as well. Next week, we have a ton of books, so we'll see that. And if you just want to reach out, let me know what you're reading, what you're enjoying. And if we're not doing something that you really enjoy, let me know, and we'll go with that. But thanks, everybody. I really do, again, appreciate all the love. Oh, the flowers, it is. All the cooking. But we'll talk to you later.
Every other show sucks. That's why you're listening to us. Every other show sucks. We're the only one that isn't us. So thank you for being smart. From the bottom of our heart. Thank you for being smart. 'Cause everything that us just thinks like a fart. They stink like a fart. Stinks like a fart. Like a fart. They stink like a fart. Let's go! 2, 3, 4, 5. That's red comics. Most of his like 9, 8, 7, 6. Jim can really act like a shut your mouth. Every other show.